Jay Crawford, Adam the Bull, Garrett Bush, and so many big names, it would take me hours to say all of their names. The ultimate Cleveland sports show. Booyah!
Friday Eve, one more day to the weekend. Welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Wow, we've got a show for you, man. We've got a show for you. Jason
I'm
over
clapping.
here.
I don't know why I'm clapping.
Jason over here breaking news.
Jason, he looks like he's in, he's a model out of the Eddie Bauer magazine.
They don't have fat models in the Eddie Bauer magazine.
Eddie Bauer Plus.
They should
Eddie
go.
Bauer Plus.
Eddie Bauer
They should,
Plus,
though.
That'll be a hot line, though, man.
Busy show. Jim Trotter from NFL.com is coming on. Do you know Jim?
No.
No.
I mean,
you know of him, but
yes.
yeah, great guy. He's coming on. He's going to talk about the NFL's Rooney Rule.
I'm waiting for the first time we have a guest on and Jay says, what a jerk.
No, there are.
This guy's terrible.
You know why? I don't ask jerks on the show.
there you go.
There are names in my Rolodex.
Come on, let's do that show. That'll be fun.
Speaking of that, Stephen A. Smith is on tomorrow.
Right.
He is not in the jerk category. Not even close. He went after the commissioner really hard in the commissioner's State of the League address last week. And I thought he was absolutely within his
back to
bounds
Trotter, not
to do
Stephen
that.
A.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
Stephen A.
Yeah.
Trotter. So he's going to come on. He'll be on at 11:30.
Yep.
We'll talk to him about the league and how they try to make progress in terms of hiring minority coaches.
There's nothing they can do, honestly.
Well, it's very. At the
the
end of the day, you're probably right.
The only
you
way
can't mandate someone to hire somebody.
The only way it's going to change is if there's diversity in ownership. That's the only way it's going to really change.
Right.
In reality, we
And-
can all pretend it's going to.
Well, we keep hearing there is a very diverse group coming.
Yeah.
To the NFL
I
ownership
think younger
group. Currently, we don't
owners.
have it.
I think younger owners, even if they're white, will help. But we really need diversity of ownership to make real change.
It's tough
And
to
you-
be
they
an
don't
owner.
ever
You
come
got
for
to be a
sale.
billionaire.
But the teams don't ever come up for sale
Yeah.
either.
No, they
It's
don't.
very
And
rare.
when they do, the people that are in line are billionaires.
Other old
and-
white guys.
And how many billionaires do we know under 30?
And how many
Elon Musk is in
How
under
many
30.
billionaire black people do you know?
I don't
LeBron
know any
James.
billionaire people.
I think
LeBron's not a real billionaire.
I think LeBron wants to own an NBA team. I mean, he's made no bones
That's
about
happening.
that.
That's going to happen.
In fact, he wants that team to be in Vegas.
Vegas, yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that will happen. Anyhow, we'll get into all of that. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Guardians. The rankings are out. We're going to tell you where it's ESPN?
MLB.com.
MLB.com. We're going to tell you where they have the Guardians ranked. We're also going to talk about that Cavs game last night. Wow, what a seesaw, crazy. I mean, they were down by 30 almost.
Early.
Really
It
early.
was looking like a 1-2-3 Cancun type of.
Boy.
And man, if the Sixers had missed a couple of free throws at the end, they would have had a shot.
They did. They came
quit
back.
playing.
They made
Philly
it
quit-
close.
Philly quit playing.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
it was.
Well, they
a
quit
wrap.
playing in the third and fourth quarters,
Right.
and then they were like, guys, let's go.
And they
They've
made
got
their
it to
free
within
throws
8.
and-
Then they got it to within 4 on 3
Yep.
different occasions.
Harden and Embiid are the most. They are the most unwatchable pair of guys playing. The way they play and the way they officiate these dudes, they shoot like 65 free throws. It's just.
It changes in the postseason, though, G.
It's
It changes in the
disgusting
postseason.
watching these dudes.
It does. Yeah,
And
it's
Embiid
slow.
is
Very
Embiid
slow.
is so huge.
He's tough to handle.
What a
for sure.
monster
He gets it
is.
in the paint. It's game
Man.
over.
Let's
You
do
can't
Bulls
stop him.
bet. By the way, it looked like you were an absolute loser yesterday.
But I just pulled it out.
He had no
I pulled it out.
assists at halftime.
I know.
And I'm like, oh, Bulls going
What's
down.
happening?
Did you see how he pulled it out? A garbage time bucket.
wasn't
with about
garbage
20
time,
seconds
in the
left.
final
It looked like
minute.
he's shooting a three. And
I thought he was
bad
gonna
beat.
What's funny is he goes to
that's
shoot the three. I'm like, pass it. And he did. I'm like, yes.
Cole is 2-1 on his bets of the week. so
That's
far,
right.
so
That's right.
We were
Well-
keeping a tracker. He's 2-1, and whenever we do Bulls bet of the week, it's brought to us by the host of Bulls podcast, Bet Rivers. Hey, Ohio, Bet Rivers online sportsbook is the place to be for every single game. Now, right now is the perfect time to join Bet Rivers Sportsbook. When you use deposit code SPORTS, you'll receive a second chance bet up to $500. Get in on all the action with weekly specials on your favorite sports like basketball and hockey to help you win big. Check out BetRivers.com or download the BetRivers app today for the latest lines, odds, and boosts. Bull, Today's bet's a big one.
Yes, it is. So we all know I don't follow a ton of college basketball, but I do know enough to know that Ohio State sucks at college basketball.
Yeah, they're not
They've
good.
been horrible. Ohio State's last win was actually against Iowa, and they beat them pretty handily. I think they won that game by 20 points about a month ago. However, since that game, these two teams have gone in the opposite direction. Ohio State's been awful. Iowa's played very well. Since that Ohio State loss, Iowa's only lost one game, and that was to a really good team. I don't know. I think it was Purdue. And so Iowa, I expect Iowa to take care of business in the game. They're looking for revenge for Ohio State beat them, and Ohio State's just a disaster.
In Columbus.
So I'll lay
Is
the
that right?
7.5 points.
It says versus Ohio State. So is it in
Now
Columbus?
I can't remember off the top of my head where the game is.
We just copied that from the email, so I will
Yeah.
double check.
Well, usually when it's written Iowa
Yeah.
versus Ohio State, it's in Columbus.
I think the game's at Iowa, but I can't rember now.
Yeah.
Either way, Ohio State's shot. They're completely
Yeah.
shot. I like
Why
Iowa
are
to
they
win
so
by double
terrible?
digits.
Why is
No.
Ohio State basketball
It's in
so-
Iowa City, by the way.
Yeah, it is in Iowa.
So
yeah,
terrible.
That's Ohio State versus Iowa then.
Yeah.
That's Bet Rivers.
There
Don't
you
worry.
go.
Not us.
They got to do better than that. They're a casino. Where's their casino? Do they have a physical casino somewhere?
Toronto. Or somewhere in Canada.
They-
Is that the only one? I wondered about that because I keep seeing those two guys that they got to do the Fox Sports, tried to compete with SportsCenter.
Yeah.
They hired Dan and Jay, those two Canadians who are like
yeah.
comedians. I don't know who's Dan and who's Jay, but one of them is doing a lot of their national commercials. So I figured they must
Right.
have had
More news on that coming in terms of sports books and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
next week.
Nothing here in
There you go.
Ohio, though, yet, anyhow.
Nope.
What's that?
I took advantage of Bulls bet of the day.
Oh, you did? All
I
right.
parlayed it with a couple others.
I like it. You win them all?
I sure did.
All right.
Dude, you're hooked.
I love
I'm
it.
just dabbling.
No, you're not dabbling. You're hooked.
Hey, as long as he's doing it within
Says
his
the guy
means.
who. Are we allowed to say what your number was on the first day of legalized gambling in Ohio?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
$7,000.
Wow.
Hey,
I'm dabbling.
But I ended like within $100 after all that. I was within $100.
It's like playing blackjack for 14 hours and you walk away with $50.
Yeah.
So I need to know, like, is this the same level of bad if you have an intervention with your buddy? Like, I would rather him dabble in, like, gambling rather than dabble in, like, heroin or something, right?
Well, they can both lead to the gutter.
Right,
Yeah,
they
they
can both.
can.
Bull had a little bit of a problem with gambling addiction, and I don't know how you beat it because it's when you're in, and this is the one addiction that you can. The more you do, the you can buy your way out of that situation.
Yeah.
Like if you're a heroin addict, you're not going to suddenly kick the habit if you start doing more.
Yeah, or you just go to,
Right.
like, cocaine. Like, you just...
Just
like,
switch
you just
drugs.
switch up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Don't do
Then
either
you go to
one.
meth. Then you
And
go
if
to,
you need help, and if you
by the
need
way,
help, seek
we
help.
recommend
right?
none of this.
None of the
this,
drugs.
right?
Do not endorse over gambling or drug use here. on
No,
Cleveland
and there is a
Sports.
hotline for if you
Yes.
have a gambling addiction.
gamble within your means.
Yeah,
within your
Google it.
means.
There's a hotline. If you get in trouble, you got to recognize it early, and you got to take steps to get out of it early.
That's right.
Just saying, Jason. Okay, you broke news last night. You broke a big story. Tell us the story first of all and how it went down.
Kevin,
If you can.
Yeah, Kevin Love and the Cavs are finalizing a buyout. And, I mean, this was Shams drove most of this. I came in at the end and helped put some bows
closed
on
the
it.
deal.
Yeah. I came in at the end and put some bows on it. Shams has been working on this for a number of days. It's been a process. I think everybody knows Kevin's out of the rotation. I don't think he's real happy about that. He wants to play. Kevin is trying to play next year. He's trying to play for his next contract. So
Wow.
he needs to get on the floor and
Do
prove.
you see him getting another contract?
Yeah, I think he will. I mean, probably a league minimum deal at this point, unless he really turns it around wherever he goes. Likely going to be Miami. I think his mind, and that's Shams' side of the reporting on this, is it's Miami. A lot of teams came out of the woodwork last night when our report went up in the middle of the night. We started.
It's not going to take much to get him, right?
No.
minimum
no.
salary.
And, well, I mean, whatever he gets from Team
The
B
buyout.
will affect the buyout.
He'll
with
be
the
made
Cavs.
whole by the buyout team.
It's exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So we don't even know
I
what-
mean, the Cavs and Kevin still have to finalize those terms on the financials of what the deal is. So it's not done, but it's gonna happen.
I
This
feel
is
like
happening.
Kevin was done a little wrong by the Cavs in the last couple of weeks. He helped his team win a championship. Now, I know he's had some real bumps in the road the last couple of years.
Yes, he has.
But he's the last piece to this 16 championship. There's a love affair between Cleveland and Kevin Love. And I expected the team to come out and say more than they've said nothing. We just watched the games and he's not in.
Yeah.
And we know that it's a coach's decision. I just felt like they should have come out maybe before the trade deadline and say, we're going in a different direction. We don't see how he helps us out. And we're going to not play him because we're trying to deal him. We don't want any injuries or anything. And they just said it's been radio silent.
Well, I think the team wanted to keep him. Kevin approached them, like, Kevin's the one who said, like, all right, that's it. Like, I'm done. I want to go. Because he wants an opportunity to play.
Jason, didn't JB say he's out of the rotation?
Yeah, yeah.
So what else are the Cavs supposed to do?
Well, I don't ever remember JB saying that. He came out, he danced around it.
You know how these things work where I don't know what's said on the record and what's said off the record, but the Cavs made very clear to the people covering the team that Kevin's out of the rotation.
Okay, so what do they owe him? Well, they paid him this multi-billion-dollar contract, million-dollar contract. He ripped the team off. He's been terrible for the most part since he re-signed this contract.
You said earlier before the show started, it's fascinating. Cavs still won a championship without Kevin Love.
I believe that. Yeah, there's no way to know for sure.
No.
But because they would have made other moves.
No, I think they needed
him.
him.
I think they absolutely needed him.
All right, listen, it's okay that you guys are wrong, but that's fine. I don't mind.
Well, you're 3-1, so
I was with the team every day for 9 months.
Yeah, I think I'm
wrong.
going to trust you.
You were busy doing other things. Who knows what you were
That's why I
up to?
looked right to you.
Please.
Look, Kevin Love wasn't the main cog. Kevin Love was a big piece.
Let's be clear. They could.
You think they couldn't have won the championship without Kevin Love?
No.
That's disappointing.
Because you got to look at the way they spaced the floor. He's exactly the dude LeBron said he wanted, right? And you can't, even when you go back and you look at, you got the shot, you got the drive. Kevin Love played defense for like 10 seconds in a row on Steph Curry.
So nobody else could have played that defense for 10 seconds.
It's his skill set. It's his open shooting.
Let's face it, his skill set is overrated. He was a guy who put up points on an awful team.
No, his skill set wasn't overrated.
But no, that's 7 years ago.
He was not stretching big, a 3-point shooter on the wing.
Yeah, but we thought he was a superstar when we got him. And he
Some
wasn't.
people did, based on the numbers he was putting up in Minnesota.
They were
but
empty
a lot of
numbers.
People knew those were fool's gold numbers.
They were empty numbers.
No one thought he was going to do that here.
But he was the third option here, too. He didn't have nearly as much oxygen in the offense as he did in Minnesota.
Yeah, but then he became the number one option when they left, and he sucked, and he's been injured.
Kevin, the series against the Warriors, Warriors were a bad matchup for him. Like, the Cavs knew it. Like, the Cavs, that whole 16th season, were looking at the Warriors going, God, what are we going to do with Kevin? And then he got concussion. They brought him off the bench. So there was a lot going on. But the role that Kevin played getting them to that point, he absolutely cooked the Raptors. He cooked a lot of teams along the way. Like, he played a very important role in this whole thing. Was he a great matchup with the Warriors? Not exactly, but he was very important in getting them there.
But here's the thing. They would have beaten all those other teams without him. You know that.
No one knows that.
Well, okay, whatever.
We're guessing that.
Yes, so are you.
Three of us are guessing.
We're all guessing. You don't think they could have beaten the Toronto Raptors without Kevin?
They were in Toronto's head. Like,
so if they needed him against Golden State, and he wasn't very good against Golden State, then why'd they need him to win it?
Listen, that Cleveland-Toronto series could be its own 30 for 30. Like,
yeah, I know. There's a lot going on there.
Wild. That whole series was
and
wild.
by the way, I disagree with also the premise that he's been terrible for the last 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
He hasn't lived up to the contract.
But here's the thing. Last
should
year,
never given him that.
Last year he was very good.
But he was a $30 million six-man.
I get it.
But here's the thing. Jay just said before, everybody loves Kevin Love. We hated him a year and a half ago. We all wanted to kick his ass out of town. He was a terrible teammate. And then he turned it around. I give him that.
He had bumps in the road.
But 2 years ago, he was a borderline cancer, was he not?
But you could be two things.
There's problems.
You could be two things at once. You could have a good year. You could have a bad year.
Like,
it's still you.
So, so let's go back in time. LeBron leaves. They don't know what to do with Kevin. He's got a year left on his contract.
Yeah.
There were people in the organization saying, do not sign him to this extension. And they did it anyway. They didn't want to go into a full-blown tank like they did the first time.
Which they did anyway.
They wanted, I know, but they wanted Kevin. They wanted a piece that they could say, look, he stayed. We can build around him. And I told Kevin, and I was a little bit wrong about this, but I told Kevin, you realize you're back in Minnesota. Like, you're back in Minnesota now. But the Cavs flipped this faster than I ever thought that they could.
It looked like he was back
for
in
a couple of
Minnesota.
years he was.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of mistakes that they made. They've just been able to cover them and fix them this last year and a half or so. There was a ton of mistakes that the Cavs made those first couple of years after LeBron left, the Kevin contract being one of them. So he signs this contract, that and he signed it because we had this conversation. It was probably more money and more years than he would have gotten in the open market. So that's why, I mean, his agent did a great job of negotiating that deal. He signs this $120 million extension. He comes back, but he wants to win. Like, he's addicted to the win now. They won in 2016. Once you taste the champagne, you don't want to go back to beer. And now suddenly he's back drinking nasty beers.
That was a
on
bad
team.
Yeah.
And he didn't know how to handle that.
Yeah.
And he's admitted he didn't know how to handle that.
He mishandled it.
He did.
Yeah.
He had a lot of blow-ups and a lot of situations that he didn't handle well. He wanted out. They would have gladly traded him, but he didn't have any value. And they were kind of looking at him like, well, play better. Like, if you want us to trade you, you got to play better. They were never going to attach any sort of asset of value to move his contract.
What's the end game for the Cavs? What do they get out of making this move now?
They are giving him what he wants.
That's it?
That's it. They're taking someone who has meant a lot to this organization, who spent 9. LeBron's been here 11 years. Kevin's been here 9. Like, there's not much difference.
Like when you look at Kevin Love, you could go back and look at all the older players that the Cavs have already had. Man, he's arguably the third best player in the history of your organization. Like, it's not like come on, Larry Nance ain't better than Kevin Love. Let's be real.
He's not the third best player. Come on now.
Well, the game has changed. The game has changed.
I'm gonna be honest. Out of your mind? You're gonna say he's better than Mark Price and Brad Daugherty?
Hey, come on, man. Let's be clear.
Come on now.
Let's be clear. How many All-Star appearances did Mark Price got? Listen, we got a love affair with people in this town that been playing in the '80s when we didn't have nothing else. Let's be clear. Kevin Love
there's some truth to that.
Kevin Love is established. He's an Olympian.
Kevin Love.
Hold on. He's an
Yeah, go ahead.
Olympian. He's 5-time All-Star, All-NBA twice. He averaged 26 and almost 14 in a year.
I do think he's going to the Hall of Fame.
Come
I
on
told
now.
Mike that this morning.
Like ain't nobody.
I don't think there's a question.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer.
Based on just his NBA career, do you think he's a Hall
No,
of Famer?
because number one in basketball, they let everybody.
Everybody's in. It's
And number
Not
two,
everybody.
and number two, it's a whole body of work. It's not just NBA.
No, I know that, but I'm asking you a question based on just his NBA career. Do you think he's a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, I do. Because of he sort of reshaped the game and how we look at power forwards. He was one of those guys. He was one of the first stretch forwards. If you look at his 3-point numbers and his rebounding numbers,
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think.
He's
Do
elite.
you think he was better as a Cav than Brad Daugherty or Mark Price?
it's different eras. It's hard to say. Like, Kevin was not good defensively. Larry Nance Sr. was spectacular
I
defensively.
get it. I get
And,
what
and
you,
Brad
Kevin Love was a 5-time All-Star as a Cav?
No, I don't know
No,
if he's a
his
Cav
career.
because I know he was in
So
Minnesota.
that's a
before he came
misleading
here.
graphic there, Mike.
but it's his career.
How many? No.
You
You
can't
said he
take
was
it
a better
away.
Cav.
He is a better player.
You're including his Minnesota career?
He is a better player than Larry Nance and Brad
I
Daugherty.
don't agree
I'm
with
sorry.
that. And there's no way, but not as a Cav. I don't think there's a debate.
Well, to G's point, I think Kevin Love is going to the Hall of Fame, and I don't think those guys are going to the Hall of Fame.
they never gonna
Well,
slip
but
the
that's-
Hall of Fame.
But that includes college and other things too.
But what I'm saying,
If you're a Hall
No,
of
no,
Famer,
but wait a second.
You're a Hall
Are
of
you-
Famer.
You're including his Minnesota career.
listen.
That's where he put up. As a Cleveland Cav, he was not better.
How long was he in Minnesota? 4 years?
He was in
6
Minnesota
years.
from 2008 to 2014.
How many All-Star and first team All-NBA as a Cav?
2 All-Stars, no All-NBA.
I mean, come on.
But again, he's playing he's third wheel.
He's a third dude to
He can't
Kyrie
get
and
the-
LeBron.
He's the third wheel playing
But-
with 2 ball dominant.
Agreed. And he was a very good player in his time here with LeBron. But G said he's the third best Cavalier ever.
He might be the third best ever.
To me, that only accounts his Cavs time, not his time in
Hey,
Minnesota.
I'm just gonna keep it real. Like, I'm just looking at the '80s. These
Mikey,
guys
where
are.
is he on the points list?
For Cavs?
Cavs all
Give me
time.
1 sec.
He got to be almost. He got to be in the top 5 for
I
rebounds.
guess he's top 5 in both.
I mean, like,
He's probably top 5 and 3-pointers too. So
I
if
actually
you
just
look
looked this
at-
up the other day. I should know, but I don't.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know where he ranks Cavs points all time, Cavs
So
rebounds
this is
all
his
time,
215.
Cavs 3-pointers all time, which
And
obviously
He's
is
ninth
that's all
all-time in
meaningless.
points as a Cav.
okay. Who's ahead of him?
Go ahead.
Kyrie, Hot Rod, Bingo Smith, Mark Price, Austin Carr, Brad Daugherty, Big Z, LeBron.
Yeah. I mean,
what is he in rebounds?
I got to go a different website. Give me 1
let's
sec.
go. Let's go, Mike. Get on it.
It's not all on
Well,
one
good for
website.
him for being second in scoring since 2015. That's a real impressive list right there.
And then you got to add that he won a championship. Like he got stuff that none of them other cats will sniff. They
Well,
don't.
none of those guys played with LeBron. I mean, come on.
You got to think about this. He'd have been on the Olympic team. He got a gold medal.
That's fine, G. That doesn't have to. When you say to me he's a better cat, the third best Cav of all time, to me, I'm only factoring his Cav.
No,
I think you're
Kevin
punishing.
Love is 5th all-time in rebounds for the Cavs, by the way.
I think you're punishing him for the sacrifice that he made in the role that he took in coming here. where he could have put up a lot bigger numbers.
He could have stayed in Minnesota and got almost
he could have
27
had
a
monster
game.
numbers, and
Right.
he wouldn't have gone anywhere and he wouldn't have won anything. But we could have looked at him and said, "Wow, look at all the numbers that he compiled."
And then we said there's those
Now he's
empty
got a ring.
stats.
I know,
Now he's
but
got a
why
ring.
should I include? I factor that in. And you want to tell me he's a top 10 Cavalier of all time? Sure, I'm with you
Well,
there.
that's no
I don't
argument.
know.
Top 10. I would probably say you could make a case for top 5. Top 3's tough.
I think 5 at best.
I mean, does he crack the top 3 with his limited time here? And the way his time here ended, I think all that has to be.
I
Kevin
think
Love's also second all time in 3-pointers made.
Yeah, I was say he's got to be top 3 in 3-pointers.
Yeah, he's
So he's
above Mark Price.
9th in points. Well, it's a different
but they
game
weren't
now.
shooting
It's
threes
a
back
different-
then.
9th
saying
in
he's behind
points,
LeBron,
5th
above
in
Mark Price.
rebounds, and 3rd in 3-pointers.
There's no way I'm putting him ahead of Kyrie
That's
as
a
a
strong
Cavalier.
argument, though.
No, I'm not. I got him in the top 3. Kyrie, listen, no disrespect. No disrespect to anybody, but you know disrespect. Kyrie Irving.
disrespect.
Here comes the disrespect.
Kyrie Irving is better than any other Cavalier that has ever
That
put
I
that
agree
jersey
with.
on,
That I agree
except
with.
for Mr. 23. That's it.
That I agree. The only argument you can make for some of the other guys is that they played for the Cavs longer. But I would agree. I would put Kyrie number 2,
Yeah, but
and then I would put Price and Doherty 3 and 4, and then maybe I'd go with Kevin Love.
And
5.
trust me, I'm not a Kevin Love cult follower. Like, I've been on him all the time. Like, I wanted to get rid of him 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But what I must say is, I can't strip his medals and say a man that averaged in this league 27 and 26 and 14 and take that away like, oh, well, just willy-nilly. Nah, man. Like, if I look at your stats and I look at Larry Nance's stats or Hot Rod and you ain't never had 20, that's hard to do. I can't strip him like that. He might not be a top 5 Cav, but I will say that Kevin Love, if he does not play with the Cavaliers, they're not winning that championship. He did a lot of
I
good
believe
things in
that.
that championship. And I think the Cavs as an organization should have did it better. They could have came to him and said, listen, Kev, you're not going to be in the rotation.
But they did.
No. I mean, formally. They could have got
Don't
him.
you think, Jason? Do you think they spoke to him, or they just did this?
I don't think that there was a lot of communication involved.
All right. Well, then that's bad.
And he
if that
deserves
happened.
better than that.
He should
That
have.
was my point.
Where you want to go, we'll get you there. We appreciate what you've done. We appreciate the contributions to the organization. Let's see if we can get you to a place and make it work for both sides. We'll do it before the trade deadline.
Well, nobody
Here's
wanted
what I
it.
don't want to see. I don't want to see him go to Miami and then we face up with Miami in the first
beats the
round.
Cavs.
Because then he's going to go 11 of 11 from three-point
Right,
range, score 45
right.
points, and bye-bye.
I mean, obviously,
That's Cleveland lore. That's how it works.
the Cavs didn't really see a path to where he was going to help them anymore. They felt like he wasn't going to help them in the postseason.
Yeah.
Like they think he's done.
And I think that's a fair assessment.
I probably, I think he's. What's funny about the whole Kevin thing is, I mean, obviously I have. Okay, like let's be clear. I have not spoken to Kevin about this. Like I texted him, he didn't return my text. I haven't talked to Kevin in weeks, but I've obviously had a relationship with him for a number of years. And at the start of the season, I wanted to do a story with him on like what does the last chapter of your NBA career look like. And he was all for it. I was supposed to come back to the facility and do it like 2 days later, and I got there and he didn't want to do it. He's like, I'm not in that mindset. We'll do it later. I'm like, okay. And then as LeBron's approaching the career scoring mark, I said, we're doing this massive podcast series at The Athletic on LeBron passing Kareem. And obviously we wanted Kevin to be part of it. I said, let's get you on that and let's do this other story on what the last chapter of your career looks like. We'll knock the whole thing out in 20 minutes. Okay, good. Then he wouldn't commit to it. He wouldn't do it. And now we're not going to do it at all. But he wanted to end his career here. Like when I talked to him at the start of the year, I said, isn't it crazy? Like you guys were staring at each other 2 years ago, waiting for the other one to die, basically. And now you want to end your career here. And he said, I know, it's crazy, but I would love to stay here. This is where I want to be. Like, this is what I always wanted. We got a chance to win now. We're winning again. This is where I want to be. But he also wants to play, and he wants another contract. And he feels like he's got more left to give. I talked to him a few weeks ago where he felt like the thumb was finally healed, and he said, I think, like, I'm really close. I'm going to turn the corner. It's coming. I can feel it. You just wait and see what these next couple weeks are going to be. And then it just never happened for him.
I don't blame him for wanting to play. I get
No,
that,
I don't either.
but-
And I don't blame the Cavs. Like, listen, JB settled on a rotation. They got hot. They were playing really well.
Yeah.
With his guys, he cut the rotation back a little bit, and they got on a roll.
Yeah.
So you roll with the
I
guys.
get it from both sides.
I have one last question because I don't know that we're going to even be able to get Jacoby in here in this 5-minute window before we have Jib Trotter on. But here's my biggest fear. The one thing that I think he did bring to this team in the playoffs is obviously that veteran leadership, that stable voice in the locker room. I know Donovan's had some playoff experience, but could this be a situation where they start to look around in April and say, boy, it would have been nice to have Kevin's presence in here?
That's why they got Danny Green.
Well, I was going to bring him up. They have to see if Danny's got anything left.
Right.
They don't think Kevin's got anything left. Now they want to look at Danny and see if Danny's got anything left in the tank, because he can help that. I died a gruesome, awful, bloody death on the Mike Miller hill when Mike was here because I was pounding the table. Mike Miller is going to win them a playoff game. Never did. One day, Mike was in his truck leaving the facility, and he rolls down his window and he goes, "Don't give up on me yet." And I'm like, "You better come through for me."
I mean,
and he never delivered.
At least it wasn't Darren Williams.
But I would have probably pounded the table again and said, Kevin Love can help this team in a postseason series. He's got the experience. He's not going to get rattled. He's not going to get shook in the moment. He can help them. And clearly the Cavs felt otherwise.
He's such a defensive liability.
He is.
Oh, man.
He always was. But, now it's worse than Larry.
If he's not making shots, he can't help.
There's no value.
Yeah, there's no value.
Okay, well, we wish him well. We wish him the best.
Well, Jay, before we move on, because we only got a few minutes for Jim Trotter, let's knock out what the internet says, because our YouTube chat, and we're getting a bunch of tweets about this topic here. Whenever we tell you what the internet says, brought to us by our good friends at PCC Airfoils. Looking for a job with career advancement and great benefits? PCC Airfoils is the place for you. It's the leading airfoil manufacturer in Northeast Ohio. All locations of PCC Airfoils in Eastlake, Menor, Wickliffe, Minerva are hiring for all positions starting at $18 and up, plus full benefit packages, paid time off, and a signing bonus. You can apply online at precast.com/careers to learn more. G, I think you make a compelling point about Kevin Love. However, the People's Champ is getting a lot of pushback. Not a lot of agreement that they'd put Love over Mark Price or Brad Daugherty. Gem Data says we need Brad in here for this conversation. If anyone knows old Cavs, it's him.
Yeah.
Roberto El Presidente says, using G. Bush's logic, Dwayne Wade is a top all-time Cav.
Come on. Dwayne Wade here for 4 minutes. He's been here 9 seasons. Come on, get better.
Steve Becker texted us that you did have Donovan Mitchell in your top, 3 or 4 a couple of weeks ago.
Well, see, here's the thing. When I base these arguments on if I'm on the playground and you say you want Larry Nance, Brad Daugherty, or Kevin Love, guess who I'm taking?
Brad Daugherty.
I'm taking Kevin Love.
I'm taking Brad Daugherty.
I mean, that's all I'm looking at.
You know, in the schoolyard, nobody's taking Kevin Love. Come on now.
See, Kevin Love brings something to the table.
I'm kidding.
That Brad Daugherty, his ability to, like you said, shoot 3-pointers and get rebounds. He's going to fill 2 stat columns for you. That's big in today's game.
And no disrespect, I think what you got to realize is it is a different game. But what you got to think about it too is, I can get 3-point shooting is so crucial that while you getting 2s, I'm getting 3s. And plus Brad Daugherty or Larry Nance or whatever has to come out from the basket and guard him on the perimeter, giving other people room to move and maneuver. It's a reason why I picked Kevin Love, not just because I think Brad Daugherty's trash.
And one more internet comment from Evan419. I'm curious what your guys' take on this is. He says Tristan Thompson was more valuable to that championship team than Kevin Love. Thoughts?
Tristan was incredibly valuable to that team because he was a weapon against the Warriors.
I agree.
Tristan was more valuable against the Warriors than Kevin was. It depends on the series and the matchup. Tristan was they were putting 2 and 3 guys on him to keep him off the glass. He could switch on pick and rolls.
I agree.
Guards 1 through 5.
Tristan was more important.
And Tristan should get his jersey retired.
He might.
I'm not. I'd say that a couple years ago.
I think LeBron, Kevin, and Kyrie are all going to the rafters, and you could make a case for
obviously, Kevin Love is a better NBA player than Tristan Thompson, but I think Tristan Thompson, during the championship run, was a more important player than Kevin Love.
It's not even more important. The statement was that they can still win the championship without Kevin Love.
I think they could have.
I think when you look at the course of a 7-game series, and not just a 7-game series, but all of the series, every player makes huge contributions at some point. And there were points in that postseason where Kevin Love was the difference maker.
Right, but you would have had somebody else in that spot.
We don't know
who it would have been.
We don't know that.
You could assume that, but you don't know that.
Well, you would have. You would have either had Andrew Wiggins or you would have done something else. There would have been flexibility to make another move. We'll never know.
Whatever. It's a barroom debate. There's one other point I want to make on Kevin before we move on. Is it was a joy to be around him for all those years because
Easy to deal with?
I watched this transformation of him. When he got here, he was sullen and quiet. He would stare at the floor every time he did media. He didn't trust anyone. He didn't talk to anyone. And the championship, I don't know if it validated him, if it unburdened him. He was a completely different person.
After
the title. He was so much more engaging.
He was a joy to be around quite often. He went on this mental health journey where he came to terms with his depression, his anxiety. He became a spokesperson and a face for mental health in this country, which we desperately needed people in his position to stand up and say, yeah, I struggle too, it's okay. I had multiple conversations with him over things like childhood suicide rates and how passionate he was, even have kids, but how passionate he was about so many kids are killing themselves today. Why is this? We need to fix this. We got to get to the bottom of this. And he just, I remember when he came out with the Players Union, or the Players Tribune story, and he wrote everything that he wrote. I think we were in San Antonio. I don't remember where we were. We were on the road. And I said, you realize you just became the face of this movement. And he said, no. And I'm like, I'm telling you.
He did. He has, really.
And he has. He didn't realize it in the moment. He didn't realize what he had done, but he held onto it with both hands. He stepped forward, and he did a lot of great things for the mental health community, and he never backed down from that. And
it takes a lot of courage.
It does, and I'm sad that it ends this way. I wish it would have had a better ending for all parties involved. There was a lot of rough moments in between. I have nothing but respect for him and wish him well.
Obviously, he deserves major kudos for that because a lot of other players would have been afraid to speak up about that.
Yeah.
By the way, one last thing on basketball, unless we have Jim ready.
Jim's not. Nope, we got another second.
One last thing on basketball. I mentioned the other day I started the Bill Russell documentary. You guys should all watch it. I finished it last night.
Yeah.
It's 2 parts. It's like almost 3 hours worth of stuff. Mm-hmm. It was really good.
What would you say is the biggest takeaway? The thing that you learned about Bill Russell that you previously didn't know?
I mean, there was a lot that I didn't know, honestly.
Was it the civil rights, how active he was?
Well, I knew he was active in terms of civil rights, but I didn't realize the extent of of how much he did. They were supposed
he
to
was a flag bearer, really.
Yeah, I mean, he and Jim Brown, obviously, and eventually Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, like they had that meeting in Cleveland.
Yes.
For some reason I didn't realize that
it was
Cleveland.
I
should have known that.
Yeah.
But just the fact, like, there was a game that they were going to play, because in those days they would play some neutral site basketball games.
They did that a lot.
There was a game they were going to play, I think it was in Louisville, Kentucky, and of course, like, the black players weren't allowed to eat at any of the restaurants, and he was just like, well, we're not going to play in the game.
Good.
And he got all the black players on both teams to not play in the game.
Think about that.
I was like, that's amazing.
Think about that. That was in your lifetime.
Well, not in my lifetime. I'm not that old, but close.
In my parents.
Certainly in your parents' life. Not far from my lifetime.
I mean, that's one generation where
it's nuts.
if we all went to a restaurant, I would have to go somewhere else.
I mean, it's crazy.
That breaks my heart just hearing you say it like that.
It's
I know,
crazy.
when you put it like that, and you know what? The three of us would say the same thing. G. Bush comes in or none of us come in.
That's right. It's nuts what he went through, what they went through. Like, when his number was retired, there were no fans there, there were no media there because they had treated him like crap.
Wow.
He didn't want them there.
Like, when his number was retired.
Originally. Now, years later, late 90s, I think, they did a ceremony for him. Wow. He had softened over the years.
Wow.
You know, people changed. There's not as many awful people. But when he originally had his numbers retired, he wanted no fans and no media. He only cared about his teammates. His teammates were good to him. But he said fans by and large were crappy. He lived when he moved to Boston, he lived in this suburb. I can't think of the name of the suburb. He was the first black family to move in, right? They used to mess with his house.
This is his own people. His own city, his own fans.
Yes.
But Jim Rice had a notoriously bad relationship with the media, too, in Boston.
Yeah.
And I think it took him a number of times to get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they made him wait. They made him suffer it out. And
I hate that part of our business.
I do, too.
The
that
pettiness,
is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's ugly.
I hate that.
And I know that's your fraternity.
No, I call it out when I see it.
And I'm glad you do, because I've talked to a lot of guys that will openly tell me that they get some kind of satisfaction, almost like they were picked last in gym class and now they're going to make the job.
Oh, it was.
That's weak. That's
weak. And it's terrible.
I hate that.
It's why Albert Bell didn't win the MVP.
I know it is.
He got screwed out of the MVP.
Well, later in the show, we're going to have a discussion in our fence rider about is Jokic going to be a three-time, 3 times in a row. And a lot of times, there have been a lot of players that were up for that award 3 times and didn't get it. Michael Jordan, I think, was up for it at least once. LeBron and Kareem were up for it twice. They won back-to-back, but didn't get it in the third. And so many times when I would talk to the voters, I'm like, well, wait, why?
I thought I should vote for him.
We just don't feel like he can win it 3 in a row. It's not a 3-year
It's
in a row
ridiculous.
award.
Totally
It embodies what's done.
It's
Totally
insane.
agree. Totally
It's
agree.
insane.
Makes me nuts.
LeBron should have more MVPs. Than
By the way,
Absolutely.
Kobe
by the
has
way-
1 MVP.
By the way, another Bill Russell thing. When he was in college, he was by far the best player. He played at the University of San Francisco. He was by far the best player. I think they won the University of San Francisco, who nobody ever heard of for basketball.
Right.
They won I think they had over 2 years like a 56-game winning streak, some absurd number. I don't remember the exact number. And he was the best player by far. It wasn't even close. And he didn't win Player of the Year because he was black.
For his team?
No,
for
for
the
the
NCAA.
NCAA.
Oh, okay.
And at the ceremony, they wanted him to congratulate the winner, so it wouldn't, because it looked so stupid that he didn't win, and he refused to do it. And I don't know, he had so much pressure on him coming in, and he said Red Auerbach saved. He was thinking about quitting. I mean, maybe it's hyperbole that he was thinking about quitting, but he said he couldn't shoot it all in the beginning. And then Red Auerbach, 2 weeks into his career, said, "I don't care if you score a single point. Play defense, get rebounds. It's all I care about." And that totally changed his career.
Freed
and
him
he just
up to
relaxed.
score. Yeah.
And he just did, and then he just dominated. And the rivalry with Chamberlain, he had said at one point when he first retired, he said that he criticized. There was the famous championship series. I think it was, I can't remember all the years now. It might have been 68. I don't remember now the exact year. But because they played the Lakers so many times, and they played Chamberlain when he was in Philly in the Eastern Conference Finals. But there was one year where Chamberlain went out with the Lakers. He missed the end of the game, and Russell criticized him for taking himself out of the game.
Wow.
So they had bad blood for a while, but they made up before.
Yeah.
They
So
both
it's 2-part
died.
series. Netflix?
Amazing.
Netflix, right?
Yeah, and I'm leaving out a ton of stuff. I mean,
Do we have Jim yet?
We don't have Jim. I just texted him. He confirmed this yesterday. He was good for today. So let's talk a little about the game last night,
Yeah.
and then
Okay.
we'll pivot when
Yeah,
Jim
yeah,
gets
yeah.
Check
on.
mine.
Not a ton to
Case
talk
he's trying to
about
reach me.
in the overall grand scheme. They were down 20-plus early. They made it close
27,
late.
I think was the number.
27. Jason alluded to it earlier. Philadelphia stopped playing for a quarter and a half before they turned it back on. But are you guys disappointed with how the Cavs came out in this one, or did you kind of foresee a letdown knowing it's the last game before All-Star break? They get an extended period off. But it was a
Yes.
big game. I was disappointed with the start. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I was too.
I was disappointed with the
I
level
was
of
more than
energy.
disappointed. I was pissed.
Because Philadelphia, this is the thing, Philadelphia, and I think Austin Carr said this in a postgame. He said they realized what it was for the seeding.
Yeah.
They understood that if they would have won that game, they had, the tiebreaker in their back pocket.
They would right now be tied
Yeah.
for the 3.
Right.
But obviously,
They'd have
being
the
2-0
tiebreaker,
against
yeah.
them, they would have the tiebreakers. They'd be in the 3 seed today right
Yes.
now.
And so they didn't come out and do what they needed to do. And I thought when JB said, "Hey guys, you got to give some pushback," I'm like, "Nah, it's more egregious than pushback. You got hit in the mouth. You got role players, the bench guys. Sometimes with the Cavs, they just roll out of bed where it's like they're not aggressive, they're kind of passive." And in the first quarter, when you got open 3 after open 3 after open 3, I don't know what they were doing defensively. I don't know if they're playing.
Nothing. That was the problem.
It was tough to watch. And then you get back into the game, it's too late sometimes. And this is what they're going to see in the playoffs. Every game will be like that.
That's right.
Every team.
If you don't bring it every night.
Every game.
Well, what scares me is I think the matchup felt more like the first half matchup than the second half matchup because it was obvious Philly had come out in the third quarter and they were like, this is in the bag. At one point, the Cavs were down 63-35. There was a 28-point deficit.
That's not ideal.
Right before halftime. No, it was not ideal. Now, they got it to within 17 at the end of 3, and on 3 different occasions within the last 2.5 minutes, they got it to within 4. But at no point did I got excited with the comeback, and I thought, hey, well, let's see what's going to happen here.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was fool's gold because it was clear Philly was practicing the third and fourth quarter.
Yeah, I was on the UCSS text chain last night, texting through the game. Thank you to those of you who stuck in there with me. There were points where it just became story time. There was nothing to text about. So here's an old Cavs story about Danny Green, and here's an old Cavs story about Joel Embiid, because it wasn't much to look at.
I'm sure it was much more entertaining than the game.
Well, but here's the thing. So I came out here, right, and told you guys after they beat Boston twice, it doesn't mean anything about the postseason. So I can't now turn around and make a big deal about this because it's one game in the regular season. They got cooked. They didn't play well. The part, I guess, that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with is that it was on the road and they just got absolutely ball batted again. And this is a young team struggling to play on the road. Yeah. And they got to figure it out. Like, they've got to figure that part out. You need a garbage can?
No, it was funny you said ball batted. I thought that was funny.
You are a child.
I know.
Yeah,
like,
so are you.
You're probably still such a fart on fire.
I try not to look over there because I knew
I
when
have
I
never
heard it, I was
sat a
like,
fart on fire, but I do laugh when I fart.
But I mean, they came out incredibly flat. Obviously, they could. The Cavs had some open looks. They weren't going down from three. They weren't getting out to the shooters defensively. And Philly, that is one team. If you don't get out to the shooters, they are going to cook you from three, and that's what Philly did.
I will say, sometimes during the first part of that game, it was like Philly would come down there, buckets, three-pointer, Tucker, all these other role guys, and then there would be Isaac Okoro left alone in the top of the corner.
Well, that's going to happen.
And so I'm like, we're going to see a lot of this in the playoffs.
But
His good play has gone off the cliff the last few games.
But you know what? This is where I'm really fascinated by Danny Green. We haven't had a chance to talk about it when I was in. We got Jim ready to go?
Yeah, I'm texting with him right now. He said he's coming on right now.
Okay, so real quick, I'm fascinated by the Danny Green thing. I don't know if he's got anything left or not. He's an absolutely perfect fit if he's got anything left, because he could be the Okoro replacement in that starting lineup.
I'm done with Okoro, by the way. I'm done with him. I'm done with him.
He went off the cliff again.
Every time he reels us back in with 3 or 4 good games, we're like, hey, so here's the real Okoro. No, the real Okoro is he's got a decent ceiling and a terrible floor, and you never know what you're going to get.
Well, here's what I worry about with him is if you remember Rodney Hood and Jordan Clarkson when they were here in that last year of the championship window, they just vanished during the postseason. And Okoro is not nearly as accomplished as they are offensively. No. That's where I think Danny Green could Danny Green's exactly what you need in terms of 3-and-D if he's got anything left. And it sounds like there's not a lot of teams out there who feel like Danny's got anything left. It was more of Danny didn't have a lot of options to choose from. It is why he ended up here.
Yeah, unfortunately, the Cavs are not the choice if you have a lot of options.
No, they're not. But if they can wring anything out of him, he could really be a nice piece for them and really fit into that spot that Okoro's holding now in the postseason.
So you think he may, by the end of the year, if he does have a little bit left, he could be moved to the starting lineup?
I think so. I mean, nobody's told me that. That's just my opinion. But I look at what Danny Green's accomplished in his career.
Yeah. I mean, why not?
Who's the better option at this point?
Right.
We don't have one.
Right.
Because Okoro, he drives me nuts.
And he may be cooked. Danny may be cooked.
Right.
2 or 3 weeks from now, we may be saying,
he's not playing at all.
Yeah.
Especially on the defensive end.
But Okoro just has he played well, and now he's had a bunch of games where it's like he's out there. I know it's not just about stats, certainly, but like he'll play 32 minutes and has no stats.
Zero.
He doesn't rebound, he doesn't pass, he doesn't do anything.
So for me, what Okoro is, I think, it's one of those things where since he's not as good as at what we want him to be good at, we kind of inflate what he is kind of good at. So it's like when people talk about him defensively, they try to make it like he's like Ron Artest or something. I'm like, bro, this dude ain't like, he's not Pippen or nothing.
But that's where else I think Danny could really help Okoro because Danny was a second-round pick who was cut a few times. Okoro was a top, 5 pick?
Yeah.
But that's where they want Okoro to get to is to the Danny Green, make an open corner 3 and defend your butt off. If you do that, you're going to play a long time in this league. You're going to make a lot of money. Isaac isn't there yet, but maybe Danny can help him get to that level.
Yeah.
Steve says we talk about Okoro like we talk about Anthony Schwartz. I think more of Okoro than Anthony Schwartz.
Okoro brings more to the party than Anthony Schwartz.
Yeah, like
I'm not putting him in that category.
Anthony would drop the keg on the way into the on the way into the Rager.
Anthony Schwartz, a poor man, Isaac Okoro.
So we have my friend Jim Trotter on with us from NFL.com. Jim, welcome to the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Great to have you on. Great to see you again as soon as I can. There he is. Yeah, brother. How are you, man? Everything good?
I'm great, man. I got to apologize to you, Jay. I pride myself on being prompt, and somehow I dropped the ball. So
it's
I apologize to you, you and your audience.
Listen, stuff happens. We wanted to talk to you about the State of the League news conference a week ago where you really were pushing Commissioner Goodell on the league's hiring record, particularly with head coaches, but even front office positions. And I love the fact that you even took it to the NFL Network, which is a subsidiary of the league. The people that work there are hired by the league, and they have to have a record and an accounting for what they do there. We have the clip of your question. Let's roll it, and then I'm going to ask you some questions on the back of it.
Jim Trotter, NFL Media. You and other league officials have said that the league's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion extend beyond the sidelines and beyond the front offices and is applied to all aspects of the company. I've worked at NFL Media for 5 years. During those 5 years, we have never had a black person in senior management in our newsroom. That's a problem because we cover a league who, according to league data, the player population is 60 to 70% black, which means that there is no one who looks like these players at the table when decisions are being made about how they are covered. More concerning is that for a year plus now, we have never had a full-time black employee on the news desk, which again is a problem because we cover a league whose player population is 60 to 70% black according to league data. I asked you about these things last year, and what you told me is that the league had fallen short and you were going to review all of your policies and practices to try and improve this. And yet a year later, nothing has changed. You know, James Baldwin once said that I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And so I would ask you as an employee, when are we in the newsroom going to have a black person in senior management, and when will we have a full-time black employee on the news desk?
Well, Jim, I am not in charge of the newsroom, so I think can I answer your question?
The person that is
As you point out, it's the same question you asked last year. And we did go back, and we have reviewed everything we've been doing across the league. And we are looking at everything from vendors that we're working with, to partners that we're working with, to ownership where we've seen significant changes in diversity just this year. And I'm not do not know specifically about the media business. We'll check in again with our people, but I am comfortable that we made significant progress across the league. I can't answer the specific questions. Some of the data you may have raised there may be accurate, maybe not. Last year I was told some of it wasn't. We'll get to you on that.
That's what I want to ask him.
We want to make progress across the board, and that includes in the media room. And so those are things that we'll continue to look at and hopefully make real progress to. I can't answer because I do not know specifically what those.
So Jim, I want to let you know that I was actually on the treadmill watching this, cheering you on. And the biggest thing I was disappointed about was that you didn't have the microphone to respond to some of the things he said. So I'm going to give you that opportunity right now. The first thing that I think you're probably chomping at the bit to respond to was his statement that some of the data you gave may have been accurate, maybe not.
Wow.
I know you as a reporter. The pains that you take to make sure everything is right, it's unlike anyone I've known. So what was your response to that and his answer in general?
Yeah, to the data he referred to, I would say this. If my data was wrong, don't you think that at some point over the last 12 months, someone from the league office would have said, your data was wrong? And nobody said that to me over the last 12 months. If we want to be really nitpick here, there was one number that I gave that was wrong. I said there were, at that time, I said there had only been one black club president. A week before, 2 weeks before, and I missed this news release, Sashi Brown had been hired as president of the Baltimore Ravens. I had missed that. So, in fact, instead of one black club president, there were two. So if he wanted to say my numbers were wrong, that is truthful, that is factual. I did miss out on Sashi Brown being hired in Baltimore at that time. But again, they had a full year to tell me that my numbers were wrong, and no one said that. It kind of reminds me of the DeMar Hamlin situation where, they're going to claim that no one notified the teams to go back out on the field and get ready to play. And yet we've got Joe Burrow warming up, and we've got the Buffalo Bills defense going back out onto the field. And they said that no one informed the teams to warm up. And yet Joe Buck said it 4 times over a 45-minute period that the teams have been notified to warm up. And yet no one from the league office, and you know this, Jay, there was an open phone line between New York and the broadcast team. No one from New York told Joe Buck and ESPN that they were wrong, that the teams had not been notified. So if the commissioner wants to quibble over that, I'm ready to go and have that discussion with him at any time. Generally, my response to his answer is that it fell short. And I say this to you because of this. Again, you had a full year to address this issue. I brought it up to you in LA at the Super Bowl. Nothing changed. And so for you to say that I don't manage the media room, the fact is New York sets our budget. New York sets our head count. New York knows exactly who is employed in the media group and in the newsroom particularly. And the heads of these departments, as you know, Jay, all report to New York, which ultimately reports to Roger if he is interested in knowing this data. So my point is, okay, now are we going to have another year with no action? And I've heard people say that, question whether or not I'm attacking the commissioner. And my point is, I am not. I don't want to ask these questions. But if you are going to present yourself in a certain way, and if you are going to say that diversity, equity, and inclusion are core principles of the NFL, then it is my job as a journalist to find out whether your actions reflect your words. Wow. And to this point, your actions do not reflect your words, particularly as it relates to Black people. And that's why I'm very focused on who I ask about. It's easy under the diversity umbrella to drop in white women or gays or whoever. And they all have a place in the NFL, and I'm not saying they don't. But when I look at what is happening with Black people in the company, check out our retention rate, check out our promotion rates. It is among the lowest in the NFL company-wide. So from that standpoint, you're right. I am going to ask you about it every opportunity I get.
Jim, I got to say that I'm personally going to attack the commissioner. I think he's a liar. I think he's as big a liar as any politician out there. I think he's completely disingenuous. I believe that he and most of the owners don't care about diversity. They don't care about inclusion. They say it because they want to get good PR for saying it, because a lot of media members will write their stories about how the commissioner wants to do this and that, but he doesn't really care about it. I don't think personally anything's going to change until we have diversity of ownership. And that doesn't mean a 10% stake in the team. That means a majority owner that's Black until we start seeing that, right? I mean, the reality is that old white guys, I'm not saying they're all racist, because they're not all racist. Some of them probably are, some of them probably not. But even if they're not, what are they used to, these old white guys? They're around a lot of other white people. They grew up around a lot of other white people. So even if it's subconscious, they're probably going to connect with a white person first. That's just the reality of the situation. And then some of them are outright racist. We may not know about it, but I'm sure there's plenty of people who do. So I honestly don't believe the league, not every owner, but I believe the majority of them don't care at all. And so I'm glad you're continuing to hold the feet to the fire, because too often in situations like this, we ask, like media members ask the questions initially, and then we all go away and forget about the story. But unless people like you keep asking these questions, nothing will change, because I don't think they really care. Anything I say unfair?
No. Let me say this about ownership. I'm not so focused on having a quote-unquote Black owner. I want a Black owner who is socially conscious, because we have a saying in the community that all skin folk ain't kinfolk. And so I do not need you to put a Black face in ownership and say, we have a Black owner. I want a Black owner who is socially conscious to the issues that affect our community and affect many of these players in terms of where they come from in their communities. So,
Great.
And look, here's the other thing. And I had this conversation with an owner who tried to tell me that I got to be careful what I say here, because I've been told not to speak about it yet, but at some point I will. But anyway, I had a conversation with an owner one time, and I asked this owner and said, are you all going to change your ownership requirements in terms of purchasing a team so that more minorities, more Blacks will have an opportunity to purchase a team? Because for your audience members who don't know, in order to purchase an NFL franchise up front, you have to pay in cash 30% of the value of the team. And so we just saw the Denver Broncos sell for $4.5 billion, which means that if you are going to purchase that team, you have to write a check for over $1 billion. That is not have a net worth of $1 billion. It is to write a check, liquid cash, for over $1 billion. I would ask you, how many black folk do you know in this country who can write a check for $1 billion? There are some. I don't know all of them. I don't know that they would have interest in the NFL in purchasing a team. But I am just saying to you, why not change your requirements to allow more people to have an opportunity to purchase a team? And until they address that, I don't believe that they're serious about this.
You know, Jim, I want to thank you for saying that, because what you said at the NFL level directly affects young African-American people at the local level trying to get jobs in journalism and media and working on television and radio. To be clear, I'm 41 years old. You know, I got a degree from Ohio University. I have a couple of those. I went to broadcasting school. I've been working and grinding in this town in Cleveland for 12, 13 years. And most of those times I was part-time. I can think in my head right now about 3 to 4 full-time guys that either cover teams that are African-American or on full-time on television or radio doing the same thing. And for me, there's this tremendous burden that you kind of feel, because halfway through that time period, you know, I remember sitting in my car and breaking down, because I thought to myself, you know, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting that opportunity? Why is the goalpost always moving? It wasn't just for me feeling bad. I felt bad for every other person that came behind me, because I said, well, look at me. My mother and father have been married forever, right? They are college graduates. I don't have overly tattoos. I'm college educated. I've never been in a correctional facility. I don't have a record. And I work 2 jobs, and I still consistently do things outside of here. If I can't get hired, how is somebody else that looks like me going to get hired that don't have that advantage? I mean, I'm coming from a 1%. So from when you say that, it resonates so much, because it's just not the NFL. It's all publications. When you look at it, those numbers represent the same thing on a local level, and local newspapers and local television and local radio. And sometimes it's just a daunting feeling like you represent so many more people outside of this that should be getting opportunities. So when y'all look at Eric Bieniemy, at this point, it's the same thing. You know, it's the goalposts are moved. Well, maybe you need some experience. How do I get experience if I won't get an opportunity? And we're not even talk about when you do get the opportunity, the wages, the income inequality. I'm already know that I'm going to make 3 times less than the guy who's less qualified than me. That's what the statistics say in corporate America. So how do we translate this conversation from NFL to get it in front of people and say, it's just not that. It's the media in general. How are we going to tell young black men that we value you, we include you, but we're not seeing equality in terms of hiring or pay wages?
Well, one of the things I try and do is just be honest with people. Like I teach part-time at San Diego State University, and I am very open with the students about what I see in the industry and what your opportunities are in the industry. Understand this, when I worked at the San Diego Union Tribune, where I spent 18 years, I was told that I was the first black hired in the sports department. And when I left there, since then, I do not believe that there has been another black hired as a sports writer in that department. People have to understand the newsroom can be a very lonely place for black people. And I'm not asking you to cry tears for me or anything like that. I'm just trying to present the facts to you. And what I would say to you is, when I was in journalism school at Howard University, what I was told is that a newsroom should reflect the community that it covers. And so when I talk about the NFL, the reason I bring up the player population is because if 60 to 70% of your player population is black, and you don't have anyone who looks like them or who shares the same cultural experiences that they have experienced, if you don't have anyone like that sitting at the desk when decisions are being made about what is going to be covered, who is going to cover it, how it is going to be covered, and whether it is going to be covered at all, that is a problem in my mind. That says to me that you are not serious about understanding what these men are going through. And here's the other thing. Let's be honest with this. After George Floyd was murdered, there was this awakening across the country where we were told, where black people were told, we hear you. We are receptive to your concerns and your sensibilities. And now here we are 2.5 years later, and it's back to we are focused on diversity. Not black people anymore, but diversity. And so that's why I bring up these numbers specifically as it relates to black people, because yeah, you might hire us for an entry-level position and say that you're getting numbers up, but then what is your record on upward mobility? What is your record on promotion? What is your record on retention of these individuals? Are there opportunities for them to climb to the highest levels of your company? And we're not seeing that right now.
It's interesting. When you mentioned that there were no blacks in senior management at the NFL Network, I know.
No, in the newsroom. I have to be focused in the newsroom.
Right. I know our buddy Galen Gordon was at the NFL Network for a while. He's left and gone to ABC. I'm wondering who replaced him, and I believe he was in charge of talent, and that's why I didn't even realize those numbers were true until you said them, and then I started going through my mind, and I'm like, yeah, the people that I know, and I don't understand how it even gets to that point, but how you made it. You brought it to the commissioner's attention last year, and it still hasn't been fixed. And before, I know you got to go, I also want you to address, have you heard anything from the commissioner since? People may not understand, that's essentially your boss.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to bring you on and to highlight that, because 99.99999% of America would never consider approaching their boss in a publicly, I don't want to say confrontational way, but you were putting his feet to the fire. Do you regret that? Have you heard any pushback or feedback from that?
Oh, I don't regret it at all. No, not in the least bit. Look, Jay, I'm about to turn 60. So I don't know how many years I have left in this business, but one thing I have told myself ever since Colin Kaepernick took a knee is that whatever time I do have left in this business, my purpose in it is to give a voice to the voiceless. And I'm going to do that to my last breath as long as I'm working in this business. So do I regret going after the commissioner, or I shouldn't say going after him, but presenting this to him? No, not in the least, because I believe that if you say you are one thing, then your actions should reflect it. And I don't need these performative gestures like, slogans in the end zone about end racism or we're all in it or we're one or
the
whatever
labels on the helmets.
Yeah, I don't need any of that. What I need is actionable behavior that reflects that this is serious to you. The biggest disappointment for me in all of this, going back to last year in Los Angeles at the Super Bowl, is that when I addressed the commissioner, no one from the league office has ever reached out to me to say, let's have a conversation about this. What can we do to try and make it better? No one.
Stunning.
And in fact, the only people who have reached out to me is in the last 4 days, where a couple of people at the network in the newsroom reached out to me and said, I hear you on this. I want to be an advocate. Kind of what can we do? And it was not the senior management that reached out to me on that either. I want to be clear on that. The other thing that has shocked me most about all of this over the last year, Jay, to be quite frank, is that the people who have come up to me most and said, thank you for doing this, are white people, right? I'm expecting it to be my fellow black employees who they thank me for asking, but it's white people who recognize that there is a problem and say we need to address it. And that kind of blew me away, and maybe that speaks to me and my mindset, but I wasn't expecting that. So why do I do it? Because I can do it. Because if I were in my mid-40s or something and I had young kids at home and a wife and a family and I had to put food on the table, maybe I don't ask that question. I'm being as transparent as I can here because I know it could potentially affect my livelihood. But as I said to you, I'm about to turn 60. If they don't renew my contract, which is up at the end of March, I will find another job. I will be fine. I've had time to prepare myself for whatever comes next. Should I have to worry about that? No, but it's a reality of life. So from that standpoint, all I say to the NFL league office, look, if you're serious about this, let's have a dialogue and let's try and come up with a way to address this issue. And for you to say, well, we have head counts or we have budgets, the NFL prints money. How much would it cost the NFL to say, we're going to create another position in senior management in the newsroom so that we are reflective of the community that we cover? Come on, really?
It's about
really.
time,
It's not a money issue.
No.
Jim, I don't have a question for you, but as a fellow journalist, I applaud your courage, man. It's awesome. You have my utmost respect, and my jaw dropped. I very rarely have I seen the commissioner tied into a pretzel like you had him tied at the
Commissioner
podium.
should be embarrassed.
And no, I just commend it to you, and you have my utmost respect. That was awesome.
No, I appreciate you. It means a lot.
Jim Trotter, before I let you go, you've written books, and you were kind enough to come on and do this. You didn't have to. Terrible shot, Jason.
I hit the light.
Nah, Jay, you know I love you, man. You were always one of the kindest people to me whenever I was on at ESPN, going back to the cold pizza days and whatnot. And I'm not a TV guy. I've never been. I still don't feel comfortable on TV. But you and going back in the day, Dana always made me feel so comfortable, man. So I got nothing but love for you. And anytime you need me, I'm here for you.
That means a lot to me, and I disagree with you. You are a TV person. You're very much a TV person. In fact, you were one of my favorite. We had a rotation to cover two guys. And they would come on and they would basically empty their notebook with tidbits. Not only was your information always A+, but I thought your delivery was A+. You were fair. You treated everybody the same way, and it's the feeling's mutual. But I know you've written a book on Junior Seau. I think you've written other books too. I just want you to go ahead and just mention the books that you've written, because I think that there are people watching here that if they weren't fans of you before, they certainly are now and would probably like to read some of your stuff. So go ahead and rattle off some of the stuff that you've written so these folks can go out and try to find it.
Yeah, no, I did write one on Junior after his death. He was someone that I knew well, and the family okayed me to write a book following his death. The last couple of years I finished up, I was 3/4 of the way through a book with Larry Fitzgerald, and then Larry told me he wanted to wait on it because he's got a lot more living to do. So we've kind of tabled that one. That one's not out there. But I will say this to the audience, and I will say this specifically to Lamar Jackson if he is watching the show, and hopefully he is. Lamar, I want to do a book with you. I would love to tell your story.
I like that.
I would love to tell your journey to this point. If you are down for it, reach out. Let me know, because I think it would be fascinating, and you could get paid off of it too. Help take care of that wallet a little bit. But yeah, that's the one I want to do, to be honest with you.
I think you're the perfect guy to tell that story. We're going to clip this and we'll put it on social, and we'll even tag Lamar so we make sure he sees it.
Real quick, would you, if you were an advisor or a friend of Lamar, would you advise him to get an agent, or would you advise him, hey, just do your thing the way you're doing it?
No, I don't think he needs an agent. As long as you have a good attorney around you, you know what the parameters are. Lamar wants a fully guaranteed contract. I can't blame him. And if I'm Lamar, I take the Kirk Cousins route and say, you want to franchise me? Franchise me. I'll play under the tag for 2 years, and then I hit the market, and somebody will pay me guaranteed money. So if they franchise him each of the next 2 years, he stands to make close to $80 million. That's not a bad payday. And then you hit the open market. So Lamar, keep doing you. That's the thing I love about Lamar, guys, is that he's so authentic, and he is simply himself, and he is not going to be pressured by anyone on the outside to do something he does not feel comfortable with. His circle is small, his circle is tight, and I just love everything about that dude in terms of his authenticity. So again, if you're watching Lamar, let's do a book.
I love it.
Jim, you're lucky. I have it on pretty good terms from league sources that Lamar wakes up every morning and watches the previous day's UCSS.
Good.
So he's definitely going to see this tomorrow. We'll put you in touch with Lamar. He's in Baltimore, but he does love us talking about the Browns and breaking them down. So we'll get you in touch with him for sure.
And before you go, Jim, I got to say, this is why I love my brothers, man. You know why? He just put up there, he said, yeah, listen, I'm 60 years old. In what year? And this dude is an alien.
I know.
60
I know it.
black people, you know, you know what we do, Jim. He like, yo, I'm about 42 forever. Jim, I say, man, you're looking good, man.
You are,
look
Jim.
60 at
It's
all.
great to see you again.
Hey, if they
and,
don't renew your contract, you'll be out of a job for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I'll be your agent.
You'll be scooped up. You got nothing to worry about,
Thanks,
man.
Jim.
Come back whenever you want.
Much
Appreciate
love to
you
you,
guys.
Jim.
Yep.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Think about the guts that takes.
Yeah.
To sit across.
Yeah.
It's not just because a lot of folks in private meetings with their boss at review time or whatever will sit across and maybe bring up a grievance, but he's essentially in a contract window.
Yeah.
And he sat across from his boss with the whole world watching. Because that State of the League news conference, you know what that is.
Yes.
I've been to some of those. You can feel the tension when you walk in the room.
Yep.
He sat in front of God and everybody and said, your hiring policies suck. I told you last year that they sucked. I'm telling you now they still suck.
You lied about doing
what
something
are you
about
going to
it.
do about
Yeah.
it? And in part of his answer, he said, well, if your numbers are
Yeah.
correct.
I mean, I think Roger Goodell is the worst.
That's condescending
It very much
to
is.
even start with. First of all, this man is a journalist. He fact checks stuff for a living. Like, that's just like.
Now, he did get something wrong, and he admitted that,
And he
that
admitted
surprised
it.
me.
And he kept it a buck. My thing is, when he does that, like, he don't understand. Like, he don't got to do that. Like, he had to, for us. See, there's always a ceiling where we going to get to. It's, you going, yeah, we'll give you a job, but you going to get here. You not, listen, this is just upward mobility, and I will give him an example of that. Listen, when the George Floyd thing happened, the whole world woke up, right? We come back again, and now the word woke is a bad thing again. Now it's just complete diversity, and we just want to include everyone. And now anytime you bring up the fact that, 65 to 75% of the people are black players in the NFL, and they're not represented on the sidelines by coaching, everybody goes on, they get offended by that number. Well, maybe they don't want to coach.
Well, not everybody gets offended, but there's a certain segment of the population.
They get upset. Well, why does it really matter? Or maybe the African American players don't want to coach. The reality of it is, when you're looking at it, and when a certain group of people grow up, there's a certain level of status, there's a certain level of rules and engagement that you understand, that you know. When he told his people, hey, man, it's a lonely world out here. It's a cold world. Man, I live it. When I go to functions, it's just one of you. It's two of you, maybe. That is and to be able to move in a room where you got a different culture, you got a different upbringing, you grew up in different circumstances, but you have to be able to move in a room full of people that have none of the shared experiences you do is the hardest thing in the world. Because if you revert too far to the left, you're the angry black guy. If you revert too far to the right, you're Uncle Tom. If you stay in the middle, people gonna say, well, you ain't never stood for nothing. It's such a burden to be able to move and to progress. And just to be an individual in this type of climate, and for the fact that he can say that to one of the most powerful men in America, is powerful. He's one of the most powerful people in the world because he looked strength. He looked at a person, to Roger Goodell, that made more money. He print money. This dude is at the head of an organization that you are not stopping. And all those powerful people that sit with him up in the boxes, and for him to say that's powerful.
And by the way, for the record, because I had a conversation with a buddy of mine that doesn't know Jim, and he said, well, maybe that was self-serving on Jim's part. And I got hot because I'm going to defend my friend. I've known Jim Trotter for over 20 years. He's always been that guy. This isn't some new coat he's decided to wear out of convenience. Jim is committed to causes that affect people that look like him. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the league can do, because we had a conversation not long ago about what can the league do. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And that analogy is you can implement a Rooney Rule where they have to interview minority candidates, but you cannot mandate who they hire. So the league is doing what they can. In terms of head coaches, what I found most egregious was the fact that those that are in positions of power, that are covering the league, don't look anything at all like the league.
That's right. And the league is not doing all it can, Jay. I mean, the Rooney Rule's a joke.
No, how do they do more?
Well, how they do more is what Jim talked about. I think it's important. I didn't realize that. Yes, there are not a lot of black people that have $1.5 billion
our
to
producer
put down.
Steve sent us a text. He said, of the 10 African-American billionaires, 10, only 3 can write a check for over $1 billion and still be a billionaire. And by the way, Jim said that the purchase price was $4.5 billion.
Right.
He said they'd have to write a check for at least $1 billion. Well, in reality, it's more like $1.3 billion. It's 30% of the purchase price.
And obviously, the reason there's so few black billionaires is because we just had a conversation a minute ago about how black people in early your lifetime and just before my lifetime, probably was still going on early in our lifetimes, like we're not able to eat at the same places in certain parts of the country and not able to stay in the same hotels. And to make that kind of money, in general, most of the people that have that kind of money, it's generational wealth. Well, most of the billionaires didn't just become billionaires. No. Some did, certainly. But more than 50, I looked up the stat a few years ago because we were talking about this during the George Floyd situation. And I think I read that it was 60-something% of billionaires. It's generational, it's been passed down and passed down. Right, And so obviously that was impossible.
So that all those people had a running head start.
Right.
And so again, to Jim's point, they could lower that threshold. And by the way, the average price of the franchise is only going to go up.
Yes. Right.
If the Broncos went for 4.5, what are the Cowboys worth?
Oh my God.
And so what happens is, as these price tags go up, that will soon be the average. NFL
think
is
about
worth
this,
$5
Jay.
billion.
The Browns, since Jimmy Haslam bought the Browns, their value, I don't know what they'd actually sell for, but the value of the team compared to what he bought it for went up 3 times.
Tripled.
He's been the worst, arguably the worst owner in the league, maybe the worst owner in sports, certainly one of the worst owners in sports. The team has done no winning. They've won 1 playoff game the entire time he's been here, and yet the franchise has gone up at 3 times in value.
I've said this.
So,
to me, the only way it'll work is if you somehow incentivized owners with draft capital if they are employing African Americans or minorities at certain positions, because more than anything, people care about winning. People care about draft capital. If you said, hey, I'm going to give you a conditional 2nd-round pick, I'll give you a 3rd-round pick if you hire an African American that made it to, say, for instance, the Super Bowl, say, for instance, to the NFC Championship game, we'll give you a 2 or a 3. People would honestly think about it because they would say, well, if he's going to be getting to the NFC Championship, if he's going to get to the Super Bowl, heck, we win, plus we get a draft pick.
Well, in a perfect world, none of this would be necessary.
Yeah,
in reality,
that would even have to...
in reality, it should be best person for the job. But the reality is that not everybody gets an equal crack.
And when you talk about the Haslams, we've been really hard on them, and rightfully so. But it's only fair to point out they should be commended.
Good record on diversity.
They should be commended on their hiring practices. Ray Farmer, Sashi Brown,
that's absolutely
Drew Jackson, Andrew Berry. They have been sort of the leaders.
Coaches, defensive coordinators.
Yeah.
They
had an all-black quarterback room.
All-black quarterback room.
Thank you.
That's a good point. It should be brought up in fairness. I don't know how we get out of this mess, but I'll say this. The fact that in this coaching hiring cycle, Eric Bieniemy did not get a job, while there were 2 guys in there. I'm not saying they're not great coaches, but there were 2 guys in this hiring cycle that got jobs that a lot of people had to look up who the hell they were. No one has to look up who Eric Bieniemy is. How long does the man have to do this at a very high level before somebody says, he's our guy?
Yeah. I mean, he had an opportunity years ago.
Anyhow, thanks to Jim Trotter.
Yeah.
And
check out his book. We will definitely have Jim back on to talk Browns and some other NFL issues. But he was awesome. We'll bring him back. We have DeQuell in 15 minutes. We got to talk a little Guardians first. And we'll save Fed's questions for tomorrow with Brad.
Okay.
Yeah. Jason, your answer's already in, so we'll include you in that. But the Guardians come in at number 9 on MLB.com's preseason poll.
Wow.
Number 9, yeah.
Wow.
High expectations, highest in the AL Central.
You're surprised by that?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Number 9,
You
like
think that's too high?
Well, no. I like the number. For me, I would look at the Guardians last year and say, okay, well they did win a playoff series. They did win a division. They did have 90+ wins. I would not think that they had them coming in at 9. And I'm looking at some of the teams that is above them, and I think that you could say, looking at it, the Phillies, the Blue Jays, you could put them at 7, as high as 7 if I'm looking at it. That just goes to show you how much good young talent they have. Now, the problem that I think they'll have is I don't know how many of those young dudes can still replicate what they did last year.
That's my fear.
Usually in baseball, you get 2 or 3 guys that ball out, and then maybe one of those guys still plays well, the other guys don't. I don't know, and bullpens and pitching is year to year too. So when you got young teams and pitching, that means so much to the game. It's like, okay, well, if you got one problem here goes wrong, maybe an injury here, 2 guys don't really live up to standards, all of a sudden, you get a team that wins 86 games instead of the projected 92, and you miss the playoffs. But it just goes to show you, they got talent.
By the way, does this not make the temperature warm up 15 degrees looking at this video?
Although it was actually warmer here yesterday than in Arizona.
It was. That's an anomaly.
Jay just got emotional because there's this thing. I played baseball since I was 6, all the way through high school. It's different when you start seeing people throw the ball around. There's this like tingle in your stomach.
You're close.
Yeah. Like
you're close now.
You get emotional. You be like, man, let me get my glove out and throw the ball around.
Yeah.
It's different right there, right?
You're right.
We
You're
love starting
right.
pitchers and catchers. What?
9 high, too high, too low.
Let me
just
see
right.
the list again, Mikey. Can you put it back up there again?
Steve,
I'd like
take
to
136
It was
on it.
Yankees,
I missed
take
1
Blue
through 5.
Jays,
Yankees
Phillies,
were 6.
Guardians.
That's
This
6,
is 1
7,
through
and 9.
5. Astros,
Astros,
Padres, Mets,
Mets,
Braves, Dodgers,
It's hard to-
NL heavy for the 5 teams in the
Hard to
NL.
quibble with those 5.
Yeah.
Yankees, Blue Jays, Phillies, Guardians, Mariners, 6 through 10.
I'm kind of. I would probably have the Guardians a little higher.
I think 7 through 10 is interchangeable on that list.
I actually think I'll tell you, I think the Dodgers aren't going to be as good this year. I think they're going to drop a little bit.
But I wouldn't drop them 7 through 10.
No, they're still top 5.
I wouldn't listen. I'd put them top 5 right now, but it wouldn't surprise me if they end up not being a top 5 team. I think people are so used to them winning so many games, but they haven't really made any significant additions this year, and they've lost some key guys. The Yankees just lost one of their starting pitchers for the year.
Yeah.
Although he's not, he's
Montas.
lower down in terms of their importance. And also, what's his name? Nestor Cortez might miss the beginning of the season too.
Yeah. They've got a lot of pitching.
The
depth,
National
though.
League, I think, is better right now at the top, outside of the Astros.
I don't think there's much question about that.
The Padres are going to be really good. The Mets should be really good. I think I would probably have the Guardians 7. I do think the Phillies got caught late, but I'm not a complete believer in them. But all those teams are really good. I mean,
yeah, you can mix and match.
Yeah, I think the Guardians are better than the Blue
Jay,
Jays.
what do you think? Just right? Too high? Too low?
Jason, before you answer, do you want to see where the rest of the AL Central came in on their MLB
Yeah,
power rankings?
yeah.
Steve, take the next one,
Imagine
138.
the White Sox.
Take it.
were
You're
White
in
Sox
the
have to be
next
next.
5,
Yeah.
and then the Twins.
Ooh, White Sox close.
Yeah, there you
Chicago
go.
could easily jump into that 7 through 10 range. They've got a ton of talent if they can stay healthy.
Yeah.
Minnesota, I might even put them lower. Detroit and Kansas City looks about right. Detroit, well, yeah,
They
that looks
suck.
about right.
Yeah, those teams are both
They're
terrible.
young. Detroit's young pitching just
I
hasn't.
think Minnesota's strategy of spending is odd. They put so much into one player.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know he's a good player, but I would rather spread that wealth out and get 3 kind of second-tier free agent guys.
Especially since
They
they have
spend, but they have a bigger payroll than the Guardians.
I know they do.
Yeah.
But they have a shortstop ready to go, and Royce Lewis.
I know
if he
they
could
do.
If he could ever stay
So
healthy.
you got a
but
guy in the
he's
pipeline.
off another
How does
injury.
Minnesota got all that money, bro?
Well, it's a bigger market.
It's a bigger market.
It is?
It is.
Oh, yeah.
A substantially
Really? I
bigger
didn't know
market.
that.
Minneapolis,
Yeah.
St. Paul
Yeah.
together.
I didn't know that.
I mean, they have 4 teams. They have a hockey team too. They have all 4 major sports.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had them just right?
Yeah.
Too high, too low?
I think 7 anywhere. You could put them 7. I'd say okay. You could put them 10, and I'd say okay.
My-
Those teams I think are all about bunched together.
My answer really, I think more than anything, shows the cynicism that a 57-year-old black and blue sports fan
Yeah,
from Cleveland
I know.
has. I want to think that they are top 10. My fear is exactly what you said. Is last year repeatable? Last year, I'm not saying it was lightning in a bottle. I'm saying there were so many things that happened that were out of the norm of baseball tradition with so many first-time guys coming up and finding great success early, the fact that all of those guys, to think that all those guys are going to repeat themselves, I just bring up the name Oscar Mercado.
Right.
That's a guy that we thought we didn't have to worry about. You're going to put him out there and not think about that position for 10 years. Didn't work out that way. I'm not saying that Quan and Gonzalez are going to become Oscar Mercado. I just think, to your point, of the 4 or 5 guys that really broke through last year, some of them are going to have sophomore slumps.
Yes.
And unfortunately for the Guardians, the offseason was like a broomstick in the spokes of a front tire of a bicycle rider. You go from 100 to 0 instantly. And now there's no momentum. I think what we saw last year was inertia and momentum and a young team in progress. It fed on itself, and it kept going,
but here's
and now
the
it's
thing,
over.
Jay. Here's the thing that I would say. Yes, some of those guys that played well last year will go backwards. Maybe permanently, maybe just for one season.
Right.
Baseball is the hardest sport to predict. There's much more reliability in the NBA and the NFL. The players that are good in those sports, unless they get hurt or whatever, usually stay pretty reliable. There are some exceptions. Baseball, you have extreme, like, look what Cody Bellinger was.
I know. How do you explain that?
Right? Like, the guy was an
MVP
MVP,
to a
and now he's
200
signing a
hitter?
one-year prove-it deal with the Cubs. Like, but here's the thing. In reality, in the lineup, they're really only relying on Gonzalez and Quan in terms of those young players, right?
They are.
Who else are they really relying on?
No, those are the two guys, but one of those two could take a step back.
True, but
Wouldn't surprise me.
Will Brennan, Bo Naylor, we could go
those
on
are
and on.
pieces. Those are
These
pieces.
are other guys that
Yeah.
even if, say, one of those guys hits the skids, well, maybe one of those other guys, like Will Brennan wasn't up for very long.
No.
He's a highly thought of prospect. Same with Bo Naylor. Same with Gabriel Arias. And there's more and more. So I think other guys could step up even if some guys step down. And the Guardians, let's face it, outside of the top 3 in their rotation, they didn't have a lot of luck in the starting rotation.
Well, that's where I was going to say.
They did not.
I'm going to give you a hot take. I have more concerns with their rotation than I do their lineup.
Yeah, I
wanted a veteran starter on this team.
I think we need one.
I think so. I did before Kevin Love took over my life yesterday. I spent hours researching contracts, and I came across some incredible numbers. Stephen Kwan, when you talk about like regression, I'm not worried about him regressing. Since 2000, 16 rookies have recorded at least a 5 WAR. All of them, except one, are legitimate stars. Here's the list. Austin Jackson was the one bust.
His WAR was 5?
5.4, I think it was. A WAR over 5. Because
That's
defensively, he won a
insane.
Gold Glove.
Right.
Here's the rest of the list of rookies to record a 5 WAR. Troy Tulowitzki, Mike Trout, Ichiro, Corey Seager, Adley Rutschman, Julio Rodriguez, Albert Pujols, Aaron Judge, Jason Hayward, Michael Harris, the second from Atlanta, the Rookie of the Year, Bryce Harper, Chris Bryant, Pete Alonso, and Jose Abreu.
Three of those guys were rookies last year, so we don't know.
So we don't know
Right.
what they're going to
Yeah.
project out to. But
But
both
the
of those
rest of
other
that
names,
list,
Most of those guys-
show me the bust.
Jason Hayward was
I even know
eventually a
the
bust,
names.
But he was good for a long time.
Yeah.
I even know those names. I say, I know those guys.
I have full confidence, and I got killed on The Athletic because halfway through last year, I used Mercado and said, Quan looks great, but everyone remember Oscar Mercado, and everyone's like, he is not Oscar Mercado.
Right.
Like, I'm not saying he is, I'm just making the point that
But
you made.
who amongst us would have said at the time Mercado was going to be a bust in a year? I didn't.
Oh, I was never
thought-
high on him.
I mean, I didn't know that it was sustainable for a career at that level.
Yeah.
But I
thought he'd be better.
I thought he would be better.
I didn't think of him the same way I think of Quan,
Real
but
quick,
I thought he'd be better.
I know
didn't
we
think
got
he'd be
the
a
quote
bust.
coming on, so I want to get through a couple more.
Yeah.
Andres Jimenez, not worried about him busting. He had a 7.4 WAR last year.
Yeah.
The first time in nearly 100 years that a second baseman recorded a WAR of at least 7. Robbie Alomar didn't have a 7 WAR until he was 31 years old, his first year in Cleveland. He was a 10-time All-Star by then. This is
Now, you're predicting that they're going to give him this deal?
that's the deal that I think he projects to, and I know it looks like a lot
How
of
many
money.
years of arbitration left does he have?
He's got 1 year of arbitration left. So the deal, the comp. So Jorge Polanco is the comp numbers wise, but contract wise, Ke'Bryan Hayes and the I almost said the Steelers,
Yeah, but
the
Ke'Bryan Hayes
Pirates.
is
8 years, $70 million deal.
Yeah, but
is what he
Brian
got.
Hayes was only in his first year.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying
Yeah.
he hadn't even done anything. Andres Jimenez is an all-star and a Gold Glove winner with 1 year of arbitration left.
Think he'd accept that? I don't think he'd accept
I don't think
that.
he would either. If I'm his agent and I get a hold of that stat, I'm like, no.
And this is
77?
why projection pieces like this are so difficult.
Yeah.
I have no idea how desperate he is for long-term security. Some of these guys want to roll the dice.
It comes down to the
Some
person.
of them want the money right now.
Right.
Yeah.
But that, I think, is fair market value for where Jimenez is right now, and maybe it is a little bit low.
He's 24.
It's $11 million.
See, if I'm Jimenez, I'm definitely going to roll the dice.
I would
I'm
be
going to
looking
bet on
at
myself.
That puts, I mean, that doesn't put him in, who was the second baseman, went to the Rangers, signed a big, Semien.
Marcus Semien.
It doesn't put him in the Semien category,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it puts him around Kettle Marte from Arizona in terms of average annual value.
Right.
Oscar Gonzalez is the one guy I do fear may regress. I think
Yes.
he's legit, but he may have the step back and then the step forward. That's what I came up with him. 7 years, $24 million. It would buy out all of his
Oh my
arbitration
God,
years.
That's a no-brainer.
But that
well,
buys.
for the Guardians,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
think he would do that.
Oh yes, he would. I think he would.
You do?
That's $3 million
Look
a
at,
year.
look at what Emmanuel
$4
Clase
million.
took. Clase took, what was it, 4 years, $20 million?
Yeah, but it's the
7?
7 year part is
This-
what I have a
but
problem
this
with. Maybe
buys out-
3 years.
It's only
No,
2
no.
years of free agency, right?
He's still no, it's 1 year free
Oh,
agency.
because he hasn't hit
He's
it yet.
still a rookie. So it's his 3 years of pre-arb,
Right.
his 3 arbitration years, and his first year of. And I ran these by Meisel, and Meisel thought I was a little high on that number.
Because he's so early in his career.
Because he's so early in his
Yeah.
career.
Well, you know what, though? When the Indians had their run in the 90s, this is what they did. They tied up the Bells, the Baergas,
Yep.
the Alamo. They tied these guys up to what sounded like big money
Yep.
deals
Yep.
for long years,
Yep.
but they had
Well,
such control. That's why they
The
were able to win
Braves
the
have
Central.
done. The
so
Braves
many
have done an amazing job of
they
doing that.
absolutely have.
They've got such bargain deals on great
But John
players.
Hart was really the first guy that I can remember to do that in the mid-'90s. There were a lot of folks around baseball that were looking at what he was doing here thinking he was nuts because it was
Smart.
then big money.
Yeah.
Well, McKenzie too.
McKenzie's the last one we have. The comp I used for him was Herman Marquez from Colorado. I'm trying to find it now. You got it there? Yeah. 5 years, $47 million. It's very similar to the deal. Marquez got 5 years, $43 million in 2019 from Colorado and had better numbers than McKenzie has. But, you know, Tristan had a pretty significant shoulder injury a couple years ago.
And his frame scares
there's
the hell out of
durability
me.
Is that
questions
1
with
year
him.
of free agency or none?
1 year free agency.
Okay.
And so I'm just trying to give a baseline framework of what we're looking at. If they can
Did you
get
put
some
this
of these
out
deals.
yet?
Yeah, it came out this morning. So it's on the.
What
I
about
hope the
Quan?
Guardians are reading it right now.
What about Quan? No Quan.
No, Quan.
No,
I
Quan
had
was the
Quan
first
on there.
one.
I don't know if
That
you.
was the first one we
Yeah.
did.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the
Well,
numbers
I
for
didn't
Quan?
see
I
the
didn't see
numbers.
it.
This was the hardest one. I put him at 6 years, $41 million, and it's really hard to comp him because when you
He's
look
a
at
unique
his
type of
numbers,
player.
Ichiro is really the only comp for him, and that was 20 years ago, and he was a veteran when he got here.
Yeah.
So the contract I went off was Michael Harris, 8 years, $72 million. He was up for 3 months and ended up winning Rookie of the Year. And the base number, I went year by year. So Michael Harris's deal, the first 6 years of his deal are $5 million, $5 million, $8 million, $8 million, $9 million, and $10 million. Just sort of tweaked that and adjusted
Yeah.
a little bit and came up with $6.
That seems fair.
I like it. I would try to sign him like to an 8 year, $60 million deal, something like that.
I would
Just
too.
same neck of the woods.
And 8 year deals are becoming
Yeah.
the norm now.
They are.
So, like, we've seen it, like I said, the Brian Hayes deal earlier on, the Michael
Yeah.
Harris deals. Some of these young guys are signing a lot longer deals.
Right.
It really comes up to the player. I'm sure the Guardians have a ton of interest in signing all of these guys to long-term extensions.
Yeah.
It comes down to the player and if how risk-averse the player is. Do they want the sure thing money now? A lot of these guys came from nothing.
The Latin American
And $24
players
million
They're
is
more
a-
likely to do
are
it.
more likely
Absolutely.
to sign.
And if I'm Tristan McKenzie, this is a real risk-reward type deal.
Yeah.
But the stress on his frame
Yep.
and the fact that he's already had a major injury, my goodness, you
This
might
is-
regret forever
Right.
if you leave that
Ask
money
Mike
on the
Clevenger.
table. Ask Mike
Ask
Clevenger.
Mike Clevenger.
Absolutely.
He's the poster child.
Go ahead and do your read, and then we'll bring
We
in
got
the
a
12.
read. We're going to bring in DQ, and we got a surprise for DQ. But DQ today is brought to us by our good friends at BetJack. The time has arrived, Ohio sports fans. Sports betting is live in the great state of Ohio. You can download the BetJack app today, so you'll be ready to go in on all the action. BetJack, it is Ohio's sportsbook. DQ, yesterday we had your former teammate Phil Taylor on the show, and Phil does a podcast with BetJack. And I'm not sure if you saw this or not, but he told us a story about you. Steve, let's play it.
You got a good DeQuell story, by the way?
The Quell?
Yeah,
We
tell
love
us
DeQuell.
tell us about
He
DeQuell.
comes on with us every week. We love him.
Other than the fact that he's bald.
The first time the D line we got him. We let him smell our little smelling sauce before the game. You know the little ammonia pack?
Yeah.
We had about 20, 30 of them joints in like
cup.
a water bottle.
Yeah.
And he ain't really know. Like he like
Oh, y'all dirty.
he hit that joint, fell over in his chair in the locker room. I was like, you better chill out.
Hey,
boy.
when your arms go limp to the side, and DeQuell was over there.
Oh yeah, he had a great game that day though.
That's a true story. That's a true story.
Did you know that was coming? You look like you knew what story was coming.
Oh yeah, well, there was a few. I'm glad he told the PG version of the story. Yeah. So what he did was, these got the D linemen. They would get a water bottle and they would wrap it with tape. So Phil and a bunch of guys. I see a bunch of guys just sniffing like the bottom. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Like, you want to hit it? I'm like, all right, I guess. All right, whatever. And I'm thinking, I can hear them rattling around, but I don't think it's like 50 of the little ammonia tabs. Man, listen, when I sniffed that, I fell over. Like that shit surprised. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep cursing.
You're fine.
Like never again. I did go out and have a great game because I was well awake. I can tell you that, man. He got me.
And that clear your sinuses in a hurry.
Actually, to be truthful, I told him DeQuell actually had a low tight fade before he smelt it. He smelt that, he was bald the rest of the week. He just went with it.
Yeah, right. Oh man, yeah. Phil was a good guy, man. He was always the guy, man. He when he would turn it on, you couldn't block him. It was you had to motivate him. He was so talented, man. And then injuries obviously caught up with him, but he was one of the better D linemen I played behind for sure.
He is one large human being.
No, he is. He definitely is. He's definitely a guy that takes up a lot of space, and I appreciated the heck out of him when I played.
Yeah, we could use one just like him right now.
By the way, he said, like we were joking about like some of the players he played with and whatever. He said he loved Johnny Manziel.
Is that right? I mean, I'm sure he was a great teammate, but on the field, he didn't give you much, but just foolishness. But, you can't, 1 year of that, a few weeks of that, but, like, you can't depend on that guy. There's no way I could have been in the locker room with Johnny Manziel. But he could have been. I'm sure he got along with everyone in the locker room, but when it comes down to it, you need to play. You need to show up on the field, man. He just didn't get it done. So you can't be my friend.
Before we move on to anything else, we talked about it on the air, but you weren't with us when we did. Congratulations on your wife. You're having a baby.
Oh, yes. I'm having a baby girl.
I'm telling you, you're having a baby.
There's another surprise I don't know about.
Like congratulations. You don't want nobody to congratulate you and you don't know what for. You be like, come on now.
She's doing pretty good, man. I tell everyone she's like a human generator. That woman doesn't slow down. We're trying to plan a trip a month before her due date. And
wow.
Yeah, the woman is incredible. She's doing well. And, it was around that time when she can't sleep all that good, but it doesn't stop that woman. So I appreciate it.
You're going to be a girl dad, right?
I will be a girl dad. I was wearing my shirt the other day. I should have wore it on air here, but I'm excited. So we'll complete the cycle. We got the boy to start it off and the girl to finish it up. No. And hopefully we're done. Hopefully we're done.
Good for you. That's exactly what we did.
Is your son excited? Like, does he know yet? Like, what's he thinking about?
Yeah, he claims, he's giving us some baby names that we don't necessarily agree with right now. He's in the monster trucks, and he asked us the other day, can we name her Gravedigger? That's not going to work, buddy.
That'd be a pretty awesome name, though.
That's awesome.
Yo.
Yeah.
Diesel.
Maybe that could be her middle name.
No,
we're not. Gravedigger is no part of my little girl's name.
No, I think I'm going to change my son's middle name to Gravedigger. I like that.
Name Grave, last name Digger. Gravedigger Jackson.
Oh, man. He's doing well with it, but I'm sure when he realizes his mother isn't for him and that she has to divide her time up, it's going to get very tricky. That's very tricky very soon. So we're ready for it, though.
Yeah.
What's the due date?
April 12th.
Awesome, man.
Nice.
Wow, we're getting close.
Man,
then.
that's like tomorrow.
That's
listen, the nursery's already put together. We had a stroller show up the other day, the wrong stroller. So I'm like, it's a stroller. Let's just keep it. No, it wasn't the right color, so we had to take it back. Like, all right.
Hey, you
one
got
of many
that.
differences between men and women.
She got that taken back. She looked at him like he was crazy. What you mean we ain't taking it back? No, you gonna take
put
it
it all together, G. I got the box, everything. I had to unfold it all and put it back in the box. But, it's our world. It's our world right now.
Yeah, I understand that for sure. Hey, thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Oh, great game. Great freaking game. I enjoyed. We had a few guests over the house, and after a while, you start doing the whole "hey, good to see you" type of thing. And then when I realized this was a really good game, I sat on the couch. I had me a drink. I wanted no parts of the conversation. I had to watch this game because it was that good. I thought. Jalen Hurts, man, if you had any doubts about him performing in the biggest stage, I thought he outplayed Patrick Mahomes, given the opportunity. But Philly is definitely going to be here to stay. And I've heard people talk about, whether or not he's a top 5 quarterback. Do you put him above Herbert? I think he's earned that right this year to get in that conversation in terms of the young, great talented throws we have in this game. So it was a great game.
Holding or not on that last play? That's what I was going to ask you
as a defensive guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the right call. I thought it was the right call. As a defensive guy, listen, the way I played the game, I understood I would scout guys to their jerseys. If I'm playing a team that has a dark jersey, I'm wearing dark gloves, and vice versa, because you can get away with the quick tugs. And, when you're in open field, you got to be mindful of where you are. And even Bradbury said it after the game. He said, listen, I thought I could get away with it. He tugged him, and that's all you need in today's game. But I don't think the game was won or lost based on that play. You got to look at Philly, fumbled, and it turned into a touchdown. So many other instances throughout that game where, things could have gone a different way. But I thought it was a very close game, and they still had a chance to end at the very end. But you got to give your hats off to Patrick Mahomes and that offense and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. The in-game adjustments, I think Dan Orlovsky, he actually broke it down beautifully in the red zone. Andy Reid, what he does best, he's able to in-game scout and self-scout and able to stress the defensive rules in order to have guys wide open in the Super Bowl. So I thought it was a brilliantly coached game. I thought the players played well. It was really entertaining. Something that hadn't been, the past Super Bowls hadn't been all that great, but this one by far was one that stands out for sure.
Real quick, do you think you got away with holds because of the color of your gloves? Because I've heard that come up before. Do you recall moments of like, oop, got away with that one? And
absolutely. Absolutely, because you got to put yourself in the mind of a ref. What stands out? And he's looking where I played, I would tell D lineman, hey, listen, if we're playing the Eagles, wear dark gloves because when you're holding, because I want you to hold so I can get around the block, so that guy doesn't get any level. So I always had a hidden agenda behind it. But yeah, if you're a ref, it's easy to spot the discoloration of the glove and the jersey. It's just an easier read as opposed to him really being clear that it's a tug, it's a hold, or whatever it is. So guys do it around the league. I'm just amazed that guys tend to fall on what looks better as opposed to what gets the job done. And I was always
crazy.
Would bowl towards getting my job done as easy as possible.
Performance over fashion. I wanted to ask you about A.J. Brown and some comments he made after the game. During an interview, he actually uttered this phrase, which floored me. Yeah, when we kicked that field goal to go up 27-21, I kind of saw that it's possible we're going to lose this game.
What?
I was shocked that he said that. What are your thoughts on that?
Wow, that is surprising.
I couldn't believe it came out of his mouth.
There's no way you're thinking you're going to lose this game. At the very least, you gain momentum. You're adding points on the board.
Right.
This is.
But weren't you thinking that, DeQuell?
We were saying
Sorry
it
to cut you
DeQuell.
off.
No, it's okay for us to think it because Jay and I said it.
I was screaming, go for it.
But I'm not on the field. I'm not on the team. Like the last thing you want to think is.
So is there a difference when you're watching it at home and when you're a player on the field?
Oh, no doubt. When you're playing on the field, you're not thinking about any scenario where you're going to lose the game. I don't recall any scenario, even with the Browns for 8 years, that I thought
you lost all the games.
We lost all the games, and every week we had to either it was fool's gold, obviously, but I had to trick my mind to think, hey, listen, we're in this until the clock strikes zero, no matter what the score is. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's the luxury of someone. Or I look at it, well, did he have confidence in his defense?
No.
That they can go out and stop Patrick Mahomes. I think it's more of an indictment there than anything.
Well, DeQuell, they might need to start putting this into the analytics. The way the rules is set up, it's almost impossible to stop a team in like the fourth quarter. If you get the ball within a minute, right, and a team, you up, right, it's almost impossible to stop these teams right now the way the rules are set up, because you got to think about how many different ways a drive can be extended.
Right.
Legal hands to the face. The holding penalty that's 5 yards, but the game, you can have somebody
Plus
down.
The defense is tired by the end of the game.
They tired. It's 3rd and 17. You get a holding penalty for 5 yards. They get a fresh set of downs. It's almost and then defensive coordinators. If it was me, hey, listen. If
they play scared.
If you want to throw a bomb and you get one-on-one coverage, so be it. But I'm bringing people. I mean, it almost seems like it's scripted, because the first play, they find somebody over the middle for 15 yards, 20 yards. I mean, why do coaches on the defensive end change their whole complexity? And have you ever been in a game where you're like, but we've been stopping them doing this the whole game. Why are we running this?
Yeah, coaches have tendencies just like teams do. And for all those reasons, coaches think about the what ifs, like what could possibly hurt us. If we play man, they're worried about a PI or a tug in a jersey, things of that nature. So they tend to lean towards quarters in crucial moments of the game and different parts of the game, particularly in the red zone. So, you just gotta trust the guys that you have out there and say, you know what, and understand the pulse of your team. I've been on a few of those bad calls on the back end where we were dominating the team, and all of a sudden we want to take our foot off the pedal and play more coverage. And every quarterback in the NFL understands cover 4 and cover 3. You know exactly where to go with the football pre-snap based on the safety. So it made life a lot difficult. And I tell you, towards the back end of my career, I knew I was done, because there's been many times, I don't know if I talked about it on this show, but when I was in Indy, we had a situation where there was a team that was backed up. It was a 3rd and 25.
Oh,
and I thought it was a mistake by the defensive coordinator. He called man coverage. And when I called it, the DBs all just sighed, like, oh my God. And I was like, wait. What do y'all want to call? What should we call? And I changed the call. Because for that reason, man coverage at 3rd and 25, if you grab, it's just too many issues that can come out of that. So we ended up changing the call, and I got cursed out when I got to the sideline, but we got off the call. I got called to the principal's office the next day, and I told him, I was like, listen, I'm out there on the field. If guys don't feel confident in the call, then I'm not going to do it all the time, but I had to do it at that moment because they would have lost respect for me and the defensive coordinator. So it's definitely happened. But I knew I was on my way out when I started changing calls.
Yeah, you was like, hey, I can't do this. See, you know too much. You know too much.
What happened on the play? You said you got off the field?
Yeah, we got so if you go back and check, they actually, if it was 3rd and 25, they gained 26 yards. And luckily for us, there was an offensive penalty.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, by the grace of God, we ended up getting off the field. And, I was justified somewhat.
It's funny. You said Jalen Hurts is a top 5 quarterback before, and I'm thinking about it. It's like, to me, you got to do it 2 years before I put you in the top 5. But then I'm thinking about the top 5. Or Jalen Hurts was fine in 2021, but he wasn't a top 5 quarterback in 2021.
No.
And I'm thinking like, so we all know Patrick Mahomes is number 1. There's no debate. Yeah. I guess the argument for the rest of the top 5, you got Allen, you got Burrow. Now we add Hurts into the conversation, Herbert, Lamar Jackson. Is anybody else in that conversation, or is that it?
No, I think
Deshaun Watson gets there.
Well, you can't put him in right now. You can't put him in right now because he hasn't played at that level for 3 years.
If you think about it, 2 slots are open. I don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do if anybody had Aaron in the top 5, but with Tom Brady out, there's at least 1 spot that's open.
All right, so
But
I think the top three, it's Mahomes.
I don't think the top three, there's any quibble on all.
Well, yeah, Mahomes is in his own tier, and then Burrow and Allen are 2 and 3, however you want to argue.
Agreed.
And then I think there's 4 and 5 are open for debate.
Yep, I agree.
Well, I think it's. I would say 4, 5, and 6.
Well,
go ahead, DeQuell.
I would say this with Allen: if he comes out and he has a great regular season and he does nothing in the postseason, and Jalen Hurts continues to build on what he's doing. I mean, all these great quarterbacks are judged based on the big moments, and that's the playoffs. You know, so I'm with you in that regard. I don't want to anoint him too much, but I think he deserves that consideration of listen, if Josh Allen, in my opinion, was like very slightly below Patrick Mahomes in the past year, he's kind of underachieved a bit. And obviously it's a team sport, but if he continues to underachieve and Jalen Hurts keeps adding on to what he's doing, I think it's a fair argument to make.
I agree. For me right now, I don't know what you guys think. I would have, obviously, Mahomes 1. I would have Burrow 2, Allen 3. I said I wouldn't put Hurts in the top 5, but I think I probably would put him at 4 right now.
Over Herbert.
I think I would because Herbert hasn't won a playoff game.
He hasn't won a playoff game, but my goodness, look at what he did in the playoff game this year. It was the defense and some of the coaching decisions.
I hear you, but
got him.
He still didn't score any points in the second half.
No, that hurt.
I mean, it's close. I mean, Herbert's got more of a track record, I think you can argue.
I
think Lamar Jackson has gone below those guys. Yeah. He hasn't done anything in the playoffs either.
No, he hasn't.
But if Jalen Hurts does it again next year, and if Allen does not in the playoffs, then I think you move him up. But I think Burrow's got – maybe I'm biased, so you guys tell me. But I think Burrow's got to be 2 right now.
I got a question for you about what Bull just said in Hurts. You in a locker room in all positions, maybe quarterback's a little separate, but how quickly can you tell if a guy's a dude or if he's just a somebody? Like, is it an immediate thing?
Well, not so. I was wrong about like Joe Hayden, for instance. When Joe was in the first 3 weeks of his career, he was terrible. He couldn't guard anyone, and all of a sudden, it was like he had the mental, just toughness to get through it. And it was almost like a light switch went on. It's like, listen, I've been beat in every facet on this football field. I can only get better from here. And he turned the switch, and he ended up being one of the best cornerbacks I ever played with. So, but from a quarterback standpoint, or most, you can definitely tell whether or not you got a guy or not, for sure. One guy that stands out to me is from Notre Dame, quarterback. Oh my God, I can't.
Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn looked the part. He said all the right things, but on the practice field, it was check down Charlie. He would not. You just knew he didn't have that secret sauce that Cleveland needed to get us over the hump. I mean, you can tell very, very quickly. But like I always tell people, Joe Hayden was that one guy who I was freaking wrong about. I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be that guy, and he ended up turning into that guy.
Well, I'll tell you another one of your teammates that I don't know about in the locker room, but a teammate of yours that a lot of people in the media were dogging when he first started. I got this one right. I've gotten plenty wrong. I thought Brandon Weeden was going to be good. But this guy I thought was good right off the bat, but people were killing him in the media the first half of his rookie year. And it turned out he might have been a Hall of Famer had he stayed healthy. He certainly was an all-pro caliber player.
You say who it was? What a build-up.
Mitchell, what'd you say?
Oh, I thought you were talking about Josh Gordon.
Oh. No, well, he ruined his own career. But Mitchell Schwartz.
What a build-up.
Oh, yeah. No, Mitch was always Mitchell was always he followed to the tune of Joe Thomas, and I knew in the locker room, I was like, this guy, he's not going to wow you. He's not going to talk about what he does and all that good stuff. He's going to come to work with his hard hat on. He was going to be a steward at his position. And man, he had a great career. Now, I didn't think he was going to go on to play and be as successful as he was, but I knew he was going to be a solid player, at least have a job in the league.
Did you know Trent Richardson wasn't no good?
Let me tell you a story. So I didn't. I thought when he came in, I mean, if you saw his legs up close, if you saw, when you turn that tape on throughout the course of a game, like it was hard to bring him down. And there was one guy in the locker room and I'll see if you guys can figure out who he is before I tell you his name. He was a DB from the Philadelphia Eagles. He was tenured. He had probably been 10 plus years in the league. And he was the first person to tell me, he was like, he isn't any good. I'm like, what? Are you serious? Yeah. Do you see this guy on the practice field? And he was adamant. When he was having great games, he was like, he's not good. And I don't know if you guys can think of it. He played DB for a very long time for the Philadelphia Eagles under Andy Reid. I'll tell you if you can't guess it.
It ain't Sante Samuel.
No, he wasn't here.
He was only here for maybe 2 years.
No, Dawkins wasn't here.
Sheldon Brown.
Oh, yeah.
Sheldon Brown. We used to fight every day about it. It's like, I'm like, dude, he is the next Jim Brown. It's like, dude, the guy's terrible. He's no good.
Why did he know that?
How do you know that?
And I was blind to it because he was always injured. And listen, we don't know if the guy was, we don't know to what extent, how much he had to deal with his injuries, but he saw the way he practiced. Listen, he didn't practice hard. And when he did practice, it was just through the motions. He didn't practice like a guy that had something to prove. And anytime you see that, it's a matter of time before when the ship sails. When you get injured, when all these other factors or contributing factors add to you not being on the field, you're going to fall hard. And that's just what happened, man. And I think he had some other issues off the field as well that he couldn't really.
What was funny is when I'll never forget Trent Richardson, after his rookie year, gets traded to the Colts for a first-round pick.
I was there with him.
What was that?
I was there with him when he got traded.
Oh,
so I almost cursed again because it's so serious. Like this guy.
You can curse, by the way. You're allowed to curse.
Listen, Trent. I hope everything is. I wish him the best, but he just didn't work hard, man. And he would miss me. We were getting ready to play a playoff game. I believe it was the AFC. Was the AFC Championship game or the game before? And Saturdays before the game, we have a walkthrough. Everyone's geeked up and. Chuck Pagano brought out Ray Lewis to speak to us and all these different greats to motivate us. And this guy is nowhere to be found on Saturday. Nowhere to be found.
What you mean?
Nowhere to be found. Wow. To the point where, the top brass and ownership was like, hey, they got a bunch of us together. Hey, what should we do in this situation?
Yeah.
It was like, what do you mean? What should you do? Should we play him? Should he dress? I'm like, listen, the guy is clearly not taking this as serious as everyone else. We don't need him. Let someone else who wants to be on the field play. And we made a decision, and the coaches made a decision not to play him. And then from that moment, he was out. He was out the door, basically.
Yeah. When you mentioned Josh Gordon briefly, from being at training camp, from my perspective of watching Josh Gordon, it never looked to me that he was working hard in practice. Did I get that wrong?
No, he worked. He worked hard. He worked hard, man. He got a bad rap because he had all these a big entourage behind him. But yeah, you're right, Jay. He made it look so easy. But when he practiced, he was unguardable. He was like, he made sure he came down with every catch.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, like if some off the field issues would have gotten addressed early on, he would have been a first ballot Hall of Fame. That's how much talent I thought he had. No doubt.
He had that set. We talked about this yesterday. He had that massive season. He played 14 games because, of course, he was suspended the first 2 games of the year.
Yeah, with 100 different quarterbacks.
Right. Who was quarterback? Was it Campbell and Whedon, I think, that year? I don't even know.
Derek Anderson?
Yards,
no, it wasn't Derek Anderson.
Hey, DeQuell, he's only one of 3 people that I call got that NyQuil ability. You know how you take NyQuil and it sneak up on you? You be like, this ain't even working. You be like this. Later. He had NyQuil speed where he would just be like, yeah, I'm walking away. And then he's gone. He's out of here. Randy Moss used to do the same thing. You'd be like, he don't even look like he's running that fast.
Yeah, he made everything look easy, man. Everything look easy. And, he had a big entourage and I don't know what. He just couldn't stay focused. He couldn't stay focused long enough to reap all the benefits the NFL could provide for him. And it's unfortunate. I know he's playing, I think he's playing the CFL or XFL or something like that.
Yeah, he's still trying. I know you were on the defensive side, he was on the offensive side, but did you ever, as a team leader, try to put your arm around this guy and say, look, bro, NFL stands for not for long if you can't get it together?
Yeah, Jay, that's a great question. All the time. And at the time, our head coach was Chud Chazinski.
Yeah.
And he would pull me out of a meeting and was like, listen, you got to talk to this guy. And literally, that was an ongoing thing with him. With me and him was like, listen, hey, listen, man, like have a plan. You can do whatever the heck you want to do in the offseason. I don't care where you go. I don't care who you do. I don't care what you put in your body. I don't care. All I care about is from August to January, you give us your best shot. And how do we figure that out? What can we do to help you, maximize your potential? Because you can help all of us. Oh, trust me, I used to give him as much game as I thought I could give him to make it make sense for him to put his hard hat on and go to work every day so you can live comfortably for the rest of your life if you play 10 years. Yeah. He had that much ability, but it just didn't register at the time.
Did you ever think that you were making some ground with him and think, oh, he heard that message, we're good now? And then
Jay, he was very receptive. He was the nicest. He's probably one of the nicest, soft-spoken guys you will ever be around. He understood it. He was a smart guy. He's not a dumb guy. He's a smart guy. It's just he was more into his priorities were off. He was more into hanging out, being out. He would buy bottles at the club and wouldn't drink them. He would rather smoke. So it's like, why pop the bottles? Just for show. It was just misguided, man. What a shame. He didn't have enough people in his corner to hold him accountable enough to fix that issue. So he's not chasing, what he's doing right now.
What could have been? Hey,
Quell, give your wife our best.
Yeah, congratulations.
I will.
We'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks for everything as always. Thanks to Jim Trotter. I thought we had a solid show today. We're back tomorrow.
Stephen A.
Overtime is coming up next. Stephen A. on the show tomorrow. Stephen A. Smith to talk about his new book. And who knows what the hell.
What's his new book about? I don't even know.
It's about his life. It's an autobiography. It's tremendous. We'll talk to Stephen A. tomorrow. See you then. Overtime is next. New York Times.